Chapter 51. Garashi was very happy to have successfully harvested a tool. In the next few days, Garashi performed several examinations and treatments on Metkai's body. What an amazing physical strength. Garashi grabbed Metkai's arm and carefully examined it. He was amazed and doubtful at the same time. With your strength, you shouldn't lose to an ordinary 4th grade student. But why did I hear from Shunian that you were lying down on the first day of school? Haha, actually, I don't know how to fight. Metkai scratched his head and laughed. Suddenly, his expression became gloomy, and Dad doesn't let me fight with others. Garashi treated him and asked, why? Is he worried that you'll be hurt by others? Metkai shook his head and whispered, no, he's just afraid of causing trouble. He's a genin, no one can beat him. Yes, he can only be beaten to death. Garashi found it funny and then asked softly, actually, you respect him a lot, don't you? During the last competition, I heard you talking to yourself. To be able to make you burst out with such a strong belief, it means that you really want to prove him to others. Metkai hesitated for a moment and nodded heavily. Although Dad is a genin that no one can beat, in my heart, he will always be the strongest. That's why I want to protect the youth that Dad talked about. Garashi withdrew his hands and finished the examination. So, shall we start today's youth training? Metkai shouted passionately. Of course, youth starts every morning. Well said, as expected of my son. At the door, a man with the same thick eyebrows as Metkai shouted, Dad. Son. The two suddenly hugged each other passionately. They were so moved that they cried. Looking at the sudden change in the style of the father and son, Garashi quietly stood a little further away. It's too infectious, it's not good to be infected. After being touched by his own feelings, Dai finally noticed Soseki next to him. Kai, is this your classmate? Dad, this is Senior Garashi. He's super powerful. He's the most powerful genius in our school. Kai, I'm so proud of you for being able to make such excellent friends when you just entered the school. As they spoke, the father and son hugged each other and cried bitterly. Garashi quietly waited at the side. Although Metkai's style was a little strange, it had to be said that his father's support and encouragement was inseparable from Metkai's unswerving determination in the future. In the middle of his sobbing, Dai gave Shushi a thumbs up. Dai. Thank you for taking care of Guy. Shushi smiled and said, Senior Dai, actually, Kai, did you hear that? Such an outstanding classmate is calling me senior. Daddy, my youth is starting to burn. Daddy, let us burn together. Seeing the father and son hugging each other and crying bitterly again, even Garashi was a little helpless. He finally understood why Dai's strength was never displayed. Most likely there was no team that could stand his character. Without a team, Dai naturally couldn't accept a difficult mission. Without a difficult mission, Dai naturally didn't have a platform to display his strength. Seeing the two finally tired from crying, Garashi quickly said, actually, I should be thanking Metkai. He beat me in running and made me deeply aware of the importance of faith. After saying that, Garashi immediately shut up. Because he knew that a mountain flood was coming. Sure enough, the next moment, Dai choked with sobs and hugged Kai tightly in his arms. He was so moved that he shouted loudly, Kai, you finally did it. As long as you work hard, you will be rewarded. However, Metkai was a little embarrassed. No, Dad, if it wasn't for the running competition, I wouldn't have been able to beat Senior Garashi. Bang. As soon as his voice fell, Dai changed from a hug to a shoulder throw and threw Kai heavily to the ground. Kai, never deny your own efforts. Dad, but if you don't believe in yourself, then your efforts are worthless. Dad, I know. I won't deny my own efforts anymore. After witnessing the domestic violence, Garashi said in a timely manner, Metkai really worked hard. His training that exceeded his limits even left internal injuries in his body. What? Kai, are you okay? Hearing this, Dai panicked and touched Kai's body. I'm fine. Senior has already examined me. Speaking up to this point, Metkai finally reacted. He hurriedly looked at Garashi. Senior, please also examine my dad. He works even harder than me. Another fish took the bait. Garashi gathered his thoughts and looked at Dai with a dignified gaze. Senior Dai, let me examine you too. Metkai introduced from the side. Garashi-senpai is Tsunade-sama's disciple. His medical skills are super amazing. What? Tsunade-sama's disciple? Dai was shocked. For a 10,000-year-old genin like him, Sannin is definitely an unattainable figure. Seeing that Dai was about to hug Kai again and encourage him to make an excellent friend, Garashi quickly pulled his hand over. He began the examination. Seeing Garashi fall into silence with a trace of shock between his eyebrows, Metke couldn't hold back his anxiety and asked, "Senior, how is my dad?" "Very bad. He has accumulated too many internal injuries." Garashi shook his head. "Then what should we do?" Metke asked anxiously. "Don't worry too much. As long as Dai-senpai can recuperate here for a while, he will be fine." "But is it my illusion?" Garashi's eyes showed a trace of doubt. "Why do I feel that Dai-senpai's body contains a terrible energy no less than Tsunade-senpai's?" "What? Senpai, you must be joking, right?" Metke scratched his head. "My dad is just a genin." However, Dai nodded with appreciation. "You are indeed Tsunade-sama's disciple. You can see my situation at a glance." Metke didn't doubt at all. The next moment he shouted with admiration, "Dad, you are amazing." Dai gave a thumbs up. "Hard work can't be unrewarded. Kai, you can do it too." After that, the two hugged and cried again. Garashi on the side was very calm. He was beginning to get used to it. After crying, Metke wiped the corner of his eyes. "But Dad, since you are so strong, why are you still a genin?" "Because of self-restraint." Mato Dai said solemnly, "Dad's strength was trained to protect the most precious things." "I understand. I will also work hard to protect Dad's youth." "Kai." "Dad." After saying that, the two of them hugged each other and cried bitterly again. Garashi sighed helplessly. "It is said that women are made of water. This father and son, are they made of tears?" Chapter 52. After the two finished crying, Garashi asked doubtfully, "Senior Dai, where did that power of yours come from? I'm a little worried. That power seems to be too great." Guy was a little worried. His father was just a genin, but he suddenly grasped a power that even Senior Garashi said was terrifying. Could it be that he had performed some taboo ritual? Dai smiled confidently. "This is a power that I mastered after 20 years of cultivation. Hashiman Tanku." Guy tilted his head, puzzled. "Hashiman Tanku?" Garashi was surprised. Hashiman Tanku is a top-level body technique developed by the second Naruto, but it's only A-level. It shouldn't be possible. Hashiman Tanku is indeed impossible. But after I completed the last gate, I opened the Hashiman Tanku array. Dai said, his eyes filled with confidence. "It can definitely reach the profound level." Metke looked at him in a daze. This was the first time he had seen his father in such high spirits. "The Hashiman Tanku was developed by the second Naruto in just a few days, but it took me 20 years to master it. However, doesn't this mean that ordinary people can surpass geniuses by relying on hard work?" Dai shouted in high spirits, "Guy, you can do it too." Metke instantly burst into tears. "Dad, I will definitely do it." Half-finished product? Garashi was not affected by the two at all. He just nodded secretly. The last gate of the Hashiman Tanku needs to be verified with one's life. The second Naruto should be aware of this, so he didn't continue to develop it. It's also possible that he developed this ninjutsu to complement the Edo Tensei, but later he discovered that the last gate of the Hashiman Tanku consumes life source. Dead people don't have such things, so he turned his eyes to the mutual multiplication explosive symbol. While Garashi was thinking, Dai put his hands on Guy's shoulders. "This technique is something that Dad got as a graduation gift." Metkai's eyes suddenly lit up. No wonder, with the contribution points that Dad got from completing D-rank missions, even if he completed 1,000 missions, he still wouldn't be able to get an A-rank ninjutsu. "Because my father knows that my talent is too poor. Even if it's a B-level ninjutsu, it would be difficult for me to learn, so he chose this one. In the introduction, as long as I work hard, I will definitely be able to learn it. But the progress of this technique is really too slow. My classmates have started to take C-level missions, but I'm still practicing. My classmates have become chunin, but I'm still practicing. I didn't tell you because I was worried that after you chose this technique. Dad, I will definitely succeed in my cultivation." Metke suddenly shouted, "Because I have a father who is better than your father." Mato Dai was stunned and said tearfully, "Kai, then you must be stronger than Daddy." Kai gave him a thumbs up. "I'll definitely do it." Just when the two were about to hug each other and cry, Garashi quickly interrupted, "Dai-senpai, although I don't know why you're only a genin with your strength, but I can recommend you to Tsunade-senpai." Hearing Garashi's words, Kai suddenly became excited. "Great, Dad, you can finally stop doing D-rank missions." However, after a moment of contemplation, Dai slowly shook his head. "Dad, why did you... Kai, do you remember what I said when you found out that your talent in ninjutsu and genjutsu is not good?" Metke nodded heavily. "You said that I'm not good at ninjutsu and genjutsu is actually something to be happy about." Because if you know your shortcomings, you can let your strengths shine. There are two sides to everything. Although a genin is not as good as a jonin, it also means freedom. Dai Chao-kai gave him a thumbs up and grinned. Because I'm a genin, even if I go to the battlefield, no one will care. In that case, I can protect my most precious thing. Metkei burst into tears. That Dai in turn was influenced by Kai. Son. No wonder he was able to arrive in time in the original work. So he was secretly protecting me from afar? Garashi was shocked and immediately shook his head. It's not just that. A genin also needs to be assigned tasks. Only a genin like him who no one wants can really do this. In this cruel world, he's probably the best father there is. Shushi sighed in his heart. He quietly left the room to give the father and son some time alone. A few days later, in another father's house. Ever since he realized that his calculations were useless, Shinku was too lazy to bring Garashi outside to train. At least this way Kurenai would be happier. With a sad sigh, Shinku asked, Garashi, how's your training? Garashi shook his head slightly. It's still not good. Don't worry, B-grade genjutsu is already a watershed. Moreover, to be able to learn this level of genjutsu at the age of 6, you've already set with Leaf's record. Shinku shook his head with some regret. It's a pity that you spent a year consolidating your foundation. Otherwise this record could be brought forward by a year. In his view, Garashi was a bit obsessed with the basics. He clearly learned it in 2 months, but he spent a whole year consolidating it. But maybe this is the willfulness of a genius. Thinking about how he spent 2 years learning the basics and was praised by his teacher as a genius in genjutsu, Shinku felt his face become a little hot. Garashi smiled and accepted the praise, but he didn't care. After all, this so-called record of his would soon be broken by someone else. A genius who graduated at the age of 5 and was able to use an A-grade ninjutsu, shadow clone jutsu. But if I wasn't distracted by medical ninjutsu, I should be able to do it with my talent in genjutsu. Garashi calculated in his heart, but his face was calm. Although I still don't have a clue, I already have some ideas. You've always been very opinionated. If you have an idea, just do it yourself. Shinku was very confident in Garashi. But this time I have some doubts. I don't know if this is the right thing to do, Garashi said hesitantly. Hearing Shushi's words, True Red Sunset also became serious. When I was training, I realized that when I reached a bottleneck in genjutsu, I would empty my mind and focus on medical ninjutsu, but when I looked back, I found that the bottleneck had already been broken. Is there such a thing? Shinku was confused. Although he was a genius in the normal sense, focusing on genjutsu was already very taxing. He didn't have the energy to do 2 things at the same time like Garashi. Garashi nodded seriously. Didn't the teachers in his previous life also say that when you were tired of doing math, you could do English tests to change your mood? Combining work and rest was very reasonable. So, I've been thinking for the past few days. Ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu. Is it possible to comprehend these fields by analogy? Are 2 fields no longer enough to satisfy you? Shinku Uhura's jaw dropped as he recalled how Shushi had asked him to teach him illusions last year. If that's the case, don't tell me Shushi is the one teaching me now? P.S. Kakashi was able to use Shadow Clone Jutsu when he was in school in episode 639 of the anime. Chapter 53. Although he wanted to say something to protect his dignity as a teacher, he couldn't do it. But can I really fool Shushi? Looking at Shushi's bright eyes, Shushi had no choice but to admit, Don't ask me, I'm just an ordinary person. Hong Nuan comforted her father. Dad, how can you be an ordinary person? You're still an ordinary genius. Hearing this, Shinku's face became even more gloomy. Shushi, are you sure you can do it? Shushi asked in a serious tone as he rubbed his face. Garashi hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. Probably not. Just as Shinku was feeling comforted, he heard Garashi sigh. Genjutsu and medical ninjutsu aren't that bad, I just lack inspiration. But taijutsu is really difficult and I don't have enough time. The corner of True Red Sunset's mouth twitched violently. It was widely acknowledged that physical skills were the easiest to learn, and there were almost no barriers to learning them. How did it become the most difficult in Stone Rince's mouth? Could it be that this was the difference between a real genius and a fake genius? However, I'm only learning taijutsu for inspiration, so even if I can't do it, it shouldn't be too big of a problem. Shinku pinched his eyebrows. I can't give you any advice on this, but you can ask Naruto-sama. He's a ninjutsu professor who can use all 7 chakra attributes, and he's proficient in all wood leaf ninjutsu. Garashi nodded. Although this was definitely an exaggeration, the strength of the Sandaime-sama was undeniable. Isn't it bad to disturb Naruto-sama? Garashi had a difficult expression, but he quickly recovered. Right, I can ask Naruto-sama for a ninjutsu. That way I won't disturb him. Shinku asked curiously, what ninjutsu do you want? Garashi said without hesitation, Hashiman Tanku. Hashiman Tanku? Shinku rubbed his chin. He didn't know much about taijutsu, but he knew that it was an A-rank ninjutsu. Are you planning to graduate early? Then he chose this technique as a gift? Garashi shook his head firmly. No, I said I would wait for everyone to graduate together. Shinku laughed. High-level ninjutsu isn't that easy to obtain. You should think of another reason. Garashi tilted his head and wondered, didn't you say that you can exchange your own developed ninjutsu for ninjutsu of the same level? Of course. Shinku's smile froze on his face as he looked at Garashi in shock. You developed an A-rank ninjutsu? Garashi shook his head. No. Phew, I was wondering. However, is it difficult to develop an A-class ninjutsu? True Red Sunset's mouth twitched. He was about to correct Garashi's thinking, but when he thought about his disciple's talent, he lost all confidence. Garashi, are you really going to develop an A-rank ninjutsu? Thinking of this, Shinku asked. Garashi nodded vigorously. I already have an idea. After all, the idea of Rasengan was there, so of course he had an idea. In fact, even if he knew the idea, Rasengan wasn't that easy to develop. Although Garashi was confident that he could do it, it wasn't necessary. Wasn't this the reason he was looking for a tool? It just so happens that Minato just started learning the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. With his eyesight, it won't be difficult for him to see the shortcomings of the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. At this time I'll give him the idea of Rasengan and let him help me develop it. Garashi thought shamelessly. With Minato's personality, he'll definitely be embarrassed to put Rasengan under his name. Then I can use Rasengan to get Hashiman Tanku for free, and he'll even have to thank me. Shinku was really scared. How long has it been since Garashi proposed to exchange for a ninjutsu? In such a short time, it wasn't even enough to develop a D-rank ninjutsu. Oh, I'm really a waste. On a secluded mountainside, a mansion stood alone. Ugly, right? What? That's the last time I turned into a monster. No monster, only a beautiful heart. I don't know what you're talking about. You've always been very brave, but for everyone you can restrain your impulse. Such a Shinakushina is really beautiful. In the room, two young boys and girls were looking at each other. Just as the temperature in the room gradually rose, an untimely call broke the atmosphere of the moment. Shinakushina Nason, I'll go open the door. Seeing Shinakushina running away in a panic, Minato, who was still a little embarrassed, smiled. That's good. Outside the door, Garashi looked around. In order to show care for the descendants of the allies, they really arranged a mansion for Shinakushina. However, they chose to live in this isolated wilderness. Are they worried about a sudden outbreak of Jinchuriki? Loneliness, maybe I can make use of it. Garashi's thoughts wandered, the door opened and Shinakushina excitedly jumped out. Garashi, you finally came to see your sister. The day after the Yunin incident, Shinakushina dragged her weak body to Garashi and forcibly recognized him as her brother. In this regard, Garashi was naturally happy to see it happen. Along the way, Kushina kept talking about the things she wanted to know. This is the pond, there are a few little turtles in it, I named them Tortoise 1, Tortoise 2. And here, this is the swing that I made myself, isn't it awesome? I liked to sit on it when I was a child. And, Garashi listened carefully and from time to time he exclaimed, which made Shinakushina introduce more enthusiastically. Then the two came to the living room. As soon as he walked in, Garashi saw someone sitting upright. Minato Gage is also here, great. Little Garashi, didn't you come to see your sister? Seeing Shinakushina's murderous look, Garashi quickly waved his hand. I came to see Shinakushina's sister, and then ask where Minato Gage is. Hearing that Minato Gage was incidental, Shinakushina nodded with satisfaction, and also gave Minato Gage a threatening look. But why is Minato Gage here, Shinakushina's sister? Hearing Garashi's question, Shinakushina's body froze instantly. Yes, he came to fight with me. Minato Gage pointed at himself innocently, and finally under Shinakushina's gaze, he nodded helplessly. I heard that Shinakushina also wants to become Naruto, so I came to challenge her. Hearing Minato Gage's explanation, Shinakushina, who was a little guilty, finally breathed a sigh of relief, and then quickly changed the topic. By the way, Garashi, why are you looking for him? Garashi nodded seriously. I want to ask Minato Gige about the cultivation of the Flying Thunder God technique. Chapter 54. If it were someone else, Minato might take it seriously. But Garashi is different. As a famous genius in wood leaf, Minato naturally doesn't believe that Garashi needs to ask him for advice. Even if it's extremely difficult to practice space-time ninjutsu, it's impossible to trap them in the beginning. This is Minato's confidence in Garashi, who is also a genius. The most important thing is that Garashi specializes in medical ninjutsu and genjutsu, so he doesn't need to rush to practice the Flying Thunder God jutsu. So, he exchanged this jutsu to help me practice, and in order to take care of my dignity as a senpai, he took the initiative to ask me for advice instead of mutual improvement. Thinking of this, Minato looked at Garashi with softer eyes. Seeing Minato frozen, Kushina unhappily patted him on the shoulder. You're too stingy, my brother didn't even want to ask you for advice. Minato gently shook his head. You misunderstood, Garashi is a genius that even Naruto-sama praised. He doesn't need to ask me for advice, he just said that to take care of my face. Kushina suddenly realized and nodded vigorously. My brother is so powerful, how can he ask you for advice? Minato was a little dumbfounded. Kushina, how can you change your face so quickly? Then you can start the discussion, I'll prepare snacks and tea for you. Kushina happily clapped her hands and said. Then humming a song, she skipped all the way to the kitchen. For her, such a lively scene would only appear in her dreams. In the living room, Minato looked at Garashi in a trance. He didn't know why, but he seemed to see a shadow of himself in him. Garashi, thank you so much for what happened before. If it weren't for you, I might not have been able to catch up with those Yunin. No, I just did what I should do. Chasing enemy spies is not what you should do. So, thank you very much. Minato was an optimistic and cheerful person. He could talk to strangers enthusiastically, let alone Garashi, who saved Kushina and had a very similar personality. With just a few words, the two of them started conversing with each other. When the topic turned to the Flying Thunder God technique, Garashi hesitated and asked, Big brother Minato, can I ask you a question before I ask you? Hearing his future brother-in-law's question, Minato suddenly became nervous. Could it be that he wants to ask about my family situation and whether I have any property in Woodleaf? Or is he asking me about my love life? Have I ever had a girlfriend before? Or, are you asking me about my current work situation and when will I be promoted to Jonin? When he thought of this, even he began to worry about his gains and losses. Garashi did not know that Minato's thoughts had gone astray. He just asked in a puzzled manner, Big brother Minato, why do you want to exchange for the Flying Thunder God technique? This technique is so difficult to practice. If you fail, won't you lose a lot of money? Hearing Garashi's question, Minato was relieved. It's because I almost lost Kushina this time, so I want to learn a technique that can appear by her side as soon as possible. Minato smiled softly and then raised the corner of his mouth. And don't you think this technique is very cool? Garashi couldn't help but smile. Yes, he almost forgot that this guy has a heart under his sunny appearance. Hey, why are you two talking so much all of a sudden? Kushina knelt down with a plate in her hand. Aha, we're talking about that technique. Minato laughed and did not mention anything about being cool. Oh, then I'll listen to it. Kushina held her chin with one hand and looked like she was watching a play. Aren't you only interested in the sealing technique? Humph, why do you care? Okay. Minato smiled and then looked at Garashi. Then let's officially start. Actually, I might be able to help Shushi a little with the advice he mentioned earlier. Garashi's eyes lit up. Minato and Ai-san, you've already started practicing? It should be more than 100 million points. Perhaps feeling that his words were pretentious, Minato explained, maybe it's because I'm particularly compatible with the Flying Thunder God technique, or maybe I have a reason to practice it successfully. With that, Minato also secretly glanced at Kushina. As a descendant of the Uzumaki clan, Kushina naturally noticed Minato's little movement in an instant. She raised her fist and said, What are you looking at me for? Could it be that your reason is to defeat me? Seeing that Kushina did not suspect anything, Minato was relieved and at the same time a little disappointed. However, Garashi noticed that Kushina's cheeks had quietly flown into a blush. Garashi, who was fed a mouthful of dog food, didn't care, but secretly pondered. Is it strong emotions and beliefs that will help the practice of the Flying Thunder God technique? Or is it that Minato can only show his true talent when his mind is full of Kushina? Minato didn't know how Garashi was thinking about him. He paused for a moment and continued, In short, I've made rapid progress in the practice of the Flying Thunder God technique. Garashi, pay attention to my movements. With that, Minato took out his kunai and shot it out of the door, and then instantly moved half a meter away. This time even Garashi was really moved. It's only been a few days, Minato and Ai-san, you've already succeeded in practicing it? Minato waved his hand again and again. In fact, I'm still far from it. Once the range is more than half a meter, the technique will fail. Although it sounds like the effect is not as good as the body flicker technique, Shinakushina and Garashi are both geniuses. Naturally, they don't not understand the gap. One is just a high-speed afterimage, the other is really across space. Shinakushina was stunned for a moment, staring at him. Too much, you actually learned such a powerful ninjutsu without saying anything. How can I fight with you in the future? Minato raised his hands in surrender and smiled bitterly. I just happened to meet the right ninjutsu. Didn't it take me 7 or 8 days to learn the A-class ninjutsu that I exchanged for when I graduated? Minato continued, just like Shinakushina, your talent in sealing jutsu, isn't it much better than mine? Shinakushina nodded approvingly, that's true. Although I haven't touched the S-class sealing jutsu yet, the A-class sealing jutsu, as long as I look at it a few times, I'll automatically learn it in a few days. As they spoke, the two of them revealed a tacit smile that indicated they were both cheaters. Then they suddenly woke up. They just wantonly showed off. Did they hurt Garashi's young heart? Chapter 55. However, Garashi is naturally not as fragile as they think, on the contrary, he is very happy. The wisdom of a single person can never be compared with the wisdom of a group. This is a truth that Garashi has understood very early. Especially in this world where bloodlines were respected, he needed more help in order to climb to the top. Or rather, he needed more excellent tools. Therefore, the stronger the talent of others, the happier Garashi will be. The only thing he has to think about is how to use their wisdom for his own use. You are all my wings. Garashi sighed in his heart, but his face was full of admiration. Shinakushina-san, Minato-san, you are all so powerful. I can't do it, even the B-class genjutsu is difficult. This time it was Minato's turn to be shocked. Garashi has already begun to practice advanced genjutsu? This is different from the Flying Thunder God jutsu. In their view, it is impossible for Garashi to successfully practice the Flying Thunder God jutsu at this stage. What they are looking forward to is some divergent ideas proposed by Garashi as a genius. But genjutsu, they know that Garashi has someone to guide him, and being allowed to practice B-class genjutsu means that Garashi's teacher thinks that he is qualified to practice advanced genjutsu. Sure enough, Garashi is not an ordinary genius. Thinking of this, they became more and more relaxed. Communicating with a real genius is worry-free. They don't have to worry about the aura they inadvertently emit will hurt others. Then, the three of them began to talk about their own experiences in cultivation without restraint. Rasengan? This jutsu seems to be able to. Listening to Garashi talking about the jutsu he wants to create, Minato's eyes lit up in an instant, and vaguely seemed to grasp something. In theory, if this jutsu is successfully developed, there is no need to make hand seals. Garashi explained with a smile. As a person who knows the future, Garashi doesn't feel surprised that there is no need to make hand seals. Even in the later stage, it is a very shameful thing to be able to make hand seals. But for Minato, the development of a ninjutsu without any seal is undoubtedly breaking their inherent understanding. Even the three-body jutsu needs to make hand seals. In the shinobi world, making ninjutsu hand seals is as normal as eating and drinking. Furthermore, the hand seals themselves also gave rise to a series of dazzling operations. 1-hand seals, 2-feet seals, rapid hand seals. Shocked, Minato muttered to himself, isn't the best ninjutsu to use with the Flying Thunder God jutsu? Thinking of this, Minato couldn't help but sigh. Garashi, it seems that I'm going to owe you another favor. Garashi waved his hand. No, actually I want to ask Minato Gage to help me complete this technique. That way we'll be even. Minato shook his head slightly. How could these things be compared? If it was purely for inspiration, it would take him 3 years to complete such a difficult technique. However, Garashi had already proposed the specific ideas. All he had to do was to figure out the flow of chakra. This kind of thing would take less than 3 months. Minato could only smile bitterly, always saying thank you is a little pale, then the only thing I can do is to help you complete this technique as soon as possible. On the side, Shinakushina, who was lying on the table, slammed the table and shouted, You're so annoying, don't always say things I don't understand. Seeing Shinakushina's resentful look of being forgotten and abandoned, Garashi hesitated and asked, Shinakushina, Nasen, can you teach me Fuinjutsu? Hearing Garashi's request, Shinakushina, who was so bored that she almost spat out bubbles, instantly cheered up. Garashi, are you also interested in Fuinjutsu? After all, it's an ultimate ninjutsu that can even seal Kagaya, the upper limit is infinite, so Garashi is naturally interested. Of course he can't say it so bluntly. Garashi nodded slowly. Actually, when I was in the hospital, I saw a lot of ninjas who were performing missions because they didn't get timely treatment, resulting in disability, and even death. So, I thought about whether I can combine medical ninjutsu and Fuinjutsu to make a medical scroll, so that even if everyone goes to the battlefield, they don't have to worry about injuries and not getting treatment. Medical scroll. Although they have already seen Garashi's fantastic ideas, when they heard this idea, Shinakushina was still shocked. Even if they are not medical ninjas, they can easily understand the huge value it represents. Not to mention the scarcity of medical ninjas, just the 3 rules of medical ninjas stipulate that medical ninjas must never be in the forefront of the battle, which limits the frontline ninjas from getting the most timely treatment. At this time, if there is a medical scroll that can replace medical ninjas, the casualty rate on the battlefield will definitely be greatly reduced, and it may even change the trend of the war. Thinking of this, the two were also excited. Garashi, can this really be done? I don't know. Garashi shook his head, but his tone was very firm. However, as long as it can help everyone, I must learn Fuinjutsu. Shinakushina also seemed to be infected by Garashi's belief, nodded vigorously, patted her chest and said, "Leave it to me." Garashi looked hesitant and asked, "But after all, that is the ninjutsu of the country of whirlpools, is it really okay for me to learn it? Where is the country of whirlpools now?" Shinakushina laughed at herself and then said, "Garashi, if you meet other survivors of the Uzumaki clan in the future, please help me take care of them." Garashi's eyes fluctuated and then nodded heavily, "I will." By the way, Shinakushina-ne, there is one more thing I want to trouble you with. Kushina's little face turned stiff, and she grabbed Shuishi's face and rubbed it. "That's too much, you are so polite to your sister. Oh my god." Listening to Garashi's difficult voice, Shinakushina was satisfied and stopped. "Say it, what is it?" Garashi rubbed his cheek and said, "Because of the Flying Thunder God Jutsu and Fuinjutsu, I may have to bother Shinakushina-sen for a while." Seeing Shinakushina's eyes overflowing with murderous intent, Garashi quickly continued, "But I have established a psychology society in school. If I am absent for a long time, it will affect the trust of the students, and it just so happens that Shinakushina-sen's house is so big. So, can I invite friends to come to Shinakushina-sen's house?" Friends? Shinakushina, who has always been straightforward, stuttered for a while. The existence of friends has always been a synonym for luxury to her. She has no friends, so she especially cherishes the current bond. Seeing Shinakushina's panic, Garashi said, "They are all my good friends. I believe that they will also like Shinakushina-san." At this point, Shinakushina understood Garashi's intention. He knows that I have no friends, so Garashi deliberately introduced his friends to me, but he was worried that I would be too sensitive, so he changed the way he said it. Shinakushina's nose was a little sour. For a moment, she was grateful to a certain Yunin ninja who was scared to death by her. "Thank you for letting me meet such a good bond." Chapter 56. In the second-grade classroom, hearing Garashi's invitation, the surrounding students exclaimed in unison. "Huh? Sister? Garashi, when did you have a sister?" Garashi looked at Asma. "It's Shinakushina from that night." Asma stared and asked, "Didn't the old man say that big sister was super fierce?" He still remembered how terrible that big sister's chakra was when she went berserk. If it wasn't for Garashi's shout at that time, he suspected that he would have been killed by now. Garashi shook his head. "No, Shinakushina is very nice. She visited me in the hospital and taught me the sealing technique." Asma's eyes were blank. Why didn't he enjoy any of these treatment? Obviously, I also contributed. Why didn't big sister look for me? He didn't want to acknowledge her as his sister, but this kind of differential treatment was too much. When did he, the second-generation Sarutobi, suffer this kind of treatment? Thinking of this, Asma quietly looked to the side and asked, "Hanako, if I save you, how will you thank me?" Hanako first looked at him vigilantly, then thought for a moment and said, "Thank you very much, I will definitely repay you in the future." That's a very normal answer. Asuma muttered. Then he asked, "What if it was Shushi who saved you?" As soon as the words came out, Asma found that Hanako's eyes changed, and even her tone instantly became gentle and pleasant. I have nothing to repay Garashi-kun, so let me give myself as a gift. Asma felt like he was struck by lightning. Was the double standard so obvious? Just when Asma was doubting his life, a warm and powerful palm was placed on his shoulder. Don't worry, it's normal to have this kind of experience when you're young. When you grow up, you'll find out. Hearing Ibixi's comfort, Asma felt better. Although he looked more mature, people like him might be more popular when he grew up. Just as he was lamenting that even Ibixi knew how to comfort people, he heard a faint voice in his ear. You're already used to it. Asuma, asterisk asterisk asterisk, asterisk, asterisk minus. Everyone was a little moved after hearing Shushi's explanation, not to mention the sorrowful against the current. Team building activities? It sounds really interesting. Is this our base of operations in the future? At this moment, Mute raised her hand weakly and said, Garashi, won't it be too much of a bother if so many of us go over? Red counted with her fair fingers. With so many of us gathered together, the room should be at least as big as 2 classrooms. Garashi smiled and waved his hand. Don't worry, Shina Kushina-san loves crowds. If she knows that you're willing to go, she'll be overjoyed. As for the rooms, Shina Kushina-san's house, including the courtyard, is probably as big as a dozen classrooms. There, we can discuss and play without any restrictions. Hearing Garashi's words, the classroom instantly turned into a sea of cheers. Wow! The class monitor's sister's house is so big. Amazing. Is this what the adults mean by kept woman? In the first grade classroom, a bone-chilling laughter came from the corner. Mekkei, who was next to him, shivered and looked at a certain love-struck fool. Bordered soil, can you stop laughing? I'm cold. However, Obito didn't seem to hear what he said at all, and he was still laughing unrestrainedly. In the end, Mekkei could not help but ask, what are you laughing at? This time, Bordered Soil finally reacted. He looked at an empty seat and saw that a certain person was not there. Then he said shyly, I noticed Lin peeking at me during class. Do you think she likes me? Mekkei was confused. Even with his limited experience in normal communication, he knew that this kind of thing had nothing to do with liking someone. Wait, how do you know Lin peeked at you during class? Of course I know, Bordered Soil said confidently, because I stared at Lin the entire class. Mekkei widened his eyes in horror. Although he was called a pervert by many people who did not understand the meaning of youth, he now felt that this title was better given to Bordered Soil. At this time, Kakashi, who was sitting in front of the two, put down the book in his pocket and said coldly without turning his head. Idiot. Although Kakashi did not mention names and did not even turn his head, Bordered Soil instinctively felt that Kakashi was scolding him. White-haired bastard, you must be jealous of me. Oh, jealous of you being the last in the class? The genius of the Uchiha clan. Bordered Soil's defense was instantly broken. In the geniuses of the Uchiha clan, someone like him is a rare breed. White-haired bastard, I will kill you. Just as he was about to pounce on him, Lin ran all the way with a red face. Then she saw someone with a ferocious face. Bordered Soil, what are you doing? Bordered Soil immediately gave up his hatred, and awkwardly retracted his hands. Ah haha, nothing, I was just killing a mosquito. Lin didn't think much about it and asked excitedly, Garashi, Senpai invited us to a club party this weekend. Bordered Soil, do you have time this weekend? Yes, of course. Bordered Soil was so excited that he almost howled. Because of the great pressure of competition, not many people in their class successfully joined the psychology club. And this party must be dominated by the seniors. Lin couldn't find anyone to talk to, so she could only talk to him. Rounding it up, isn't it just a party for him and Lin? Just as Bordered Soil was thinking about something else, an annoying voice sounded. Can I join this party? Bordered Soil stared at Kakashi. What are you doing as a member of the psychology club? But before he could speak, Lin had already agreed. Senpai said that as long as you are a friend, you can come. Thank you, Kakashi replied with a cold expression. On the side, Mekkei was inexplicably excited. Kakashi, are you going to challenge Garashi-senpai again? Bordered Soil and Lin were also shocked. Originally, after Kakashi was defeated in seconds that day, he almost became a joke in the school. However, when Kakashi used the multiple shadow clone jutsu in front of the whole class, those who laughed at him were instantly silenced. They now understood that Kakashi lost not because he was too weak, but because Garashi-senpai was too strong. Hearing Mekkei's inquiry, Kakashi's cold eyes became complicated. To be able to learn A-class ninjutsu at the age of 5, although he didn't say it, he was still quite proud. However, in front of that person his pride was torn to pieces. At the same time, it made him feel ashamed, but at the same time, it also gave him a motivation to defeat that person. However, now is not the time. Under the expectant gaze of several people, Kakashi slowly shook his head. I haven't found a way to deal with his genjutsu. This time I'm just going to observe. Chapter 57. Weekend at Shinakushina's house. A dozen or so people were gathered in the middle of the living room. Asuma, play this, play this. Asuma, do you know how to play? Stop arguing, didn't you hear what Garashi said? Don't talk when you're watching others play cards, that's basic etiquette. Yep, I'll play 50,000. It's over, X3. Ah. Is this what Shushi meant by, 1 shot, 3 shots? Asuma, you're really something. In the hallway. I won't lose, I'm very steady. If his 17 cards can one-shot me, I bordered soil will immediately, by the pool. The turtle fishing competition has begun, there's no limit. Wait, can I drain the pool? In the courtyard, Shinakushina was busy preparing the barbecue grill. Shinakushina, listen, I'm sorry to trouble you. Garashi was washing the vegetables. How can this be considered trouble? Shinakushina glared at him. If it weren't for the fact that she couldn't free herself, she would have reminded Garashi of the fear of being molested. Actually, I was careless and didn't control the number of people. It's good to have more people. With more people, you won't feel like you've been forgotten by the world. Listening to the laughter around her, her eyes softened. It's only now that I won't think of myself as someone without roots. Garashi fell silent for a moment, then suddenly changed the topic. Shinakushina, listen, how's the seal in your body? It's still the same, the third-generation old man sealing technique isn't good enough. Shinakushina looked down on him, then waved her hand carelessly. But don't worry, I'm no longer the same as before. That old fox won't be able to control me anymore. Garashi heaved a sigh of relief. He then asked hesitantly, Shinakushina, have you ever thought of using another way to get along with the monster in your body? Another way? Shinakushina blinked and muttered to herself, beat it up? But I don't think I can beat it. I mean, use love to influence it. Garashi said as he took out a stack of cards from behind him and placed it in front of Shinakushina. Isn't that the one they're playing? Shinakushina pointed at bordered soil, who was stuffing cards into his mouth with a look of despair. Garashi retracted his gaze. Look at how happy they are. You know that games are the best way to spread love. It likes this kind of thing? Shinakushina still couldn't believe it. She couldn't associate a terrifying monster like Kyubi with a childish game like cards. How do you know if you don't try? Garashi said and sighed. Actually, according to some of my observations and analysis, I suspect that these tailed beasts are all sick. Shinakushina widened her eyes and asked, sick? And it's a very serious psychological illness. Garashi nodded. Those monsters should be intelligent, right? But since they were born, they have been feared by people because of their terrifying size and powerful strength. And their so-called kind seems to fight whenever they meet for some reason. So, these tailed beasts are all lonely. This loneliness that lasts for thousands of years finally fills their empty hearts with the desire to destroy, right? Shinakushina was in a trance. Yes, she had only been lonely for a few years and it was already very painful. What kind of experience would it be to be lonely for thousands of years? Thinking of this, Shinakushina looked at the dog in her seal with a trace of sympathy in her eyes. Seeing Shinakushina fall into deep thought, Garashi smiled. Most importantly, there's nothing to lose by trying, right? Shinakushina nodded vigorously. Holding the cards, she said solemnly, I understand. Watch me, I'll go and reform it now. At the same time, the big dog in the seal flapped its ears, and a rather irritable and embarrassed voice echoed in the seal. I'm not sick, damn human brat. Also, even if I'm sealed for 100 years, even if I'm bored to death, I'll never accept your charity. In the outside world, Shui Mu's arrival caused a commotion. Memories would beautify a person's image. When Shui Mu appeared again after a year, everyone had long forgotten the unpleasant things of the past. Instead, it was replaced by concern and expectation. Shui Mu, I heard that you've been practicing taijutsu for the last year? My meridians are damaged and I can't circulate chakra, but I can still practice the most basic taijutsu. You're too hardworking. You're injured and you don't even rest in the hospital. That's right, we're not as hardworking as you in school. Shui Mu did not answer. His eyes were full of coldness and only became hot when he looked at the courtyard. Of course, he would not forget who quarreled with a big shot like Tsunade, who gave him hope to climb out of the abyss, and who worked hard to pay for his high hospitalization fees when his relief fund was not enough to pay for his high hospitalization fees. You know that Garashi gave up early graduation because of his promise, but none of you know how to work hard. You're endlessly wasting Garashi's kindness and efforts. Shui Mu walked to the side indifferently and practiced alone. I'm not the same as you incompetent waste. I have to work 10 times harder than you, and then I can become the most valuable tool in Garashi's hands. On the grass on the other side. Cousin Shunyan, what's wrong with you? Bordered Soil, who ran outside after eating his cards, followed Shunyan's line of sight and saw a man in a white hospital gown practicing alone. Hey, this senpai is so hardworking. Cousin, do you know him? How could I not know him? Shunyan smiled bitterly. He was beaten up by me and my companions at that time. Bordered Soil was shocked. Cousin, didn't you say that you were separated from those bad guys last year? His injury was from last year. How could it be that he hasn't recovered after so long? Because it was a serious injury that destroyed his hope of becoming a ninja. This. Bordered Soil looked at his cousin dumbfounded. No matter what, this is too much. Too much, right? Perhaps Shunyan saw through Bordered Soil's thoughts. He smiled bitterly and sighed. That's why I told you at that time, some things can't be made up for no matter how much you do. Will I be like my cousin in the future? As soon as this idea came to his mind, Bordered Soil directly denied it and said, Guy was right last time. My talent is so bad that I can't be a bad guy even if I want to. Rin couldn't help but ask, that senpai is too pitiful. Even Tsunade-sama can't cure him? I heard that Tsunade-sama seems to be unable to cure him for some special reasons. What should I do? Speaking of this, Shunyan suddenly laughed. Do you think that I respect Garashi just because he guided me back on the right track? Is it because senpai changed Tsunade-sama's decision? Shunyan shook his head and said in a sigh, Garashi took my fault on himself and wants to perform the surgery on Mizuki himself. Rin was shocked. This is too, Bordered Soil asked puzzledly. Rin, is there a problem? Didn't you say last time that Garashi-senpai has performed many surgeries? Rin shook her head. Those are small surgeries and the success rate is very high. However, to give a person who has lost the hope of becoming a ninja a new life, such a surgery, the success rate is ridiculously low, and it is accompanied by great risks. Generally, medical ninjas are not willing to perform this surgery. If they are not careful, they may bear the reputation of being a murderous quack. It can be said that senpai is gambling with his reputation. Kakashi, who had been silent on the side, suddenly remembered something. Since last year, there have been rumors in the village that his father violated the ninja code for his companions. Although those missions were finally completed because of his father's strength, those rumors didn't completely disappear. He also asked his father if it was worth it, but his father just smiled and said that he would know when he grew up. Thinking of this, Kakashi suddenly asked, Is it worth it? Even if he doesn't stand up, no one can blame him. I don't know. Garashi's gentle voice came from the front. You don't know? Kakashi suddenly looked up and was surprised. When I say I don't know how to judge from your position. Shushi smiled slightly. This is different from Shunyan and the others. I can clearly judge that their bullying is absolutely wrong. But this situation has nothing to do with right or wrong. So, even if I tell you my answer, you may not agree. The only one who can tell you the answer is yourself. Chapter 58. The only one who can tell me the answer. Is it only me? Kakashi muttered to himself with dull eyes. That's why Dad said that I will only understand after I grow up and experience it for myself? Seeing Kakashi's expression that said, Master, I understand now, Shushi mused to himself. It seems that learning from the masters is still very useful. Anyway, the people around them understood. Rin waved her small fist and said with starry eyes, Garashi, senpai, I understand. I will definitely work hard in the direction of a real medical ninja. Shunyan also had a look of realization. I understand, although I can't directly atone for my sins to Mizuki, just like Garashi bears my mistakes, I can also bear other people's mistakes. Kindness and mistakes can be spread. This is the answer my heart tells me. Seeing Kakashi, Rin and his cousin all understand, Bordered Soil was anxious. I also understand. Metke, who also didn't understand, hurriedly asked, Bordered Soil, what do you understand? Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Bordered Soil almost fainted, but fortunately he saw something and said in a heavy and sad tone, Don't gamble, gambling is harmful. Garashi said with a little dumbfounded, Well, if you all continue to understand, the barbecue will be eaten up. Upon hearing Shushi's words, the people who were still on the lawn hurriedly ran over to him. Bastard, it's already started. Leave some for me. However, they were still a step too late. When they arrived, they could only wait for the second round. Looking at the other students eating with oily faces, Bordered Soil looked envious. Damn, I want to eat. After glancing at Garashi standing in the distance, Bordered Soil felt a little comforted. Forget it, even Garashi-senpai didn't eat. But at that moment, two girls carrying plates full of food surrounded Shushi, one on the left and one on the right. They separated Shushi from the other girls who were about to make a move. Garashi, this is the drumstick I saved for you. Garashi, this is the steak I saved for you. Seeing this situation, Bordered Soil's eyes almost turned into the shape of a lemon. Sure enough, the joys and sorrows between people are not the same. They are all eating barbecue and I can only watch them eat barbecue. At this time, a burst of smoke suddenly burst in the crowded crowd. What happened? Is it an enemy ninja village invasion? Amidst these panicked shouts, a bold and unrestrained laughter was particularly eye-catching. Mount Myaboku, boom. After a scream, a man with 2 red marks under the corner of his eyes was dragged out by the furious Shinakushina by the collar. You bastard, how dare you scare my guests? Wait, this is just a friendly greeting. Shinakushina actually recovered from her anger. She was worried that she would scare her new friends, but just as she was feeling uneasy, there was a burst of cheers around her. Wow. Shinakushina, Nesan is so cool. Hit him, my meat skewer fell to the ground. Hearing these cheers, Shinakushina's spirit was refreshed, and the flames in her eyes rose again. Wait, I'm not a bad person. Just as the screams were rhythmically echoing through the forest, a gentle voice that was mixed with some annoyance sounded in a timely manner. Shinakushina, please put him down, this is my sensei, one of the Sannin Jiraiya-sama. Sannin? Tsunade looked at the panda eyes in her hand for a while. Mount Myaboku Jiraiya-sama. Although the lines were very high-end, the miserable image of being held in her hand made him look completely different. Sure enough, he's as unreliable as Naruto. Shinakushina disdainfully curled her lips, but still obediently put Jiraiya down. Wow. He's one of the Sannin Jiraiya-sama? I heard that Jiraiya-sama is super invincible. Although his lecherous habits haven't changed, at least Jiraiya, who hasn't embarked on the perverted road of the later generations, is still very respected at this time. After hearing these words of worship, Jiraiya, who was a little dispirited, finally regained a little confidence at this moment. However, these discussions changed as he listened. Is he really Jiraiya-sama? He's obviously the coward who was beaten by Shinakushina-sama and didn't dare to fight back. Did that big brother recognize the wrong person? He's so handsome, how can he have such an ugly sensei? I understand, this uncle must be too ugly to find a girlfriend, so he came to play with us children. Jiraiya's eyes were numb. Is it wrong to like children? How can this be linked to him not being able to find a girlfriend? What's more sad is that he really doesn't have a girlfriend. This inexplicable bleak atmosphere made Minato unable to stand it, and quickly pulled Jiraiya aside. Sensei, I'm really sorry, Shinakushina, I'm just playing with her. Jiraiya pretended to laugh a few times, but in his heart he was depressed. This little girl's appearance is too similar to Tsunade. I was so scared that I forgot to resist. But looking at Minato, who was smiling bitterly, he felt some comfort. Hey, he found a violent girl like Tsunade as his girlfriend. This kid Minato will suffer in the future. Seeing that the lively atmosphere had quieted down, Shushi stood up and said, I forgot to introduce you all. This is Enai-san Namikaze Minato. He's a very powerful ninja, and he's even learned the extremely difficult S-class ninjutsu. As for Jiraiya-sama, there should be many students who have bought Jiraiya-sama's works. Today is a good opportunity to ask for his autograph or ask about the story. And if you're hungry, you can start preparing for the second round of barbecue. Hearing Garashi's words, the originally silent crowd instantly became lively. Is he Shimizu Garashi? Seeing this scene, Jiraiya was secretly surprised. This little guy is really amazing. He suddenly livened up the atmosphere. First, he pointed out the characteristics of Minato and me so that we won't be left out, and then he mentioned the barbecue so that the little guys who are not interested in me and Minato will have something to do. But before he could think about it, Jiraiya was flooded by curious readers. Jiraiya-san, how many demon girlfriends does Naruto, the protagonist of your Legend of Ninja Perseverance, have? Jiraiya-sama, in your Legend of Ninja Perseverance, the heroine Steel Hand and the defeated villain Orochi, are they based on the other two Sannin? Hearing this, Jiraiya's forehead dripped with cold sweat. On the other side, Minato was also surrounded by children. Minato and Aizen, can you show us that again? Well, let's see the power of an S-class ninjutsu. Minato was confused. If he used the Flying Thunder God Jutsu that can teleport half a meter, he will definitely be looked down upon. In the center of the courtyard, Shinakushina, as the chef, was surrounded by people. Shinakushina, Sen, you worked hard, this is for you? Yes, this time it's our turn to barbecue. Looking at the pure eyes around her, Shinakushina felt as if sand entered her eyes. It was sour and itchy. Everyone was shouting and laughing happily. It was like a beautiful painting. Chapter 59. 2 months after the party, Shinakushina's house. Ambush him, listen to me, you can't grab this card. Because I listened to you, I don't know how many times I lost. Hearing the other's disdainful voice, the fox in the sealed space was anxious. This old man has lived for more than 1,000 years, what haven't I seen, how can I lie to you? Shinakushina was powerless. I didn't say you lied to me, but your level is really too low. Too many times, too many times, too many times. As if there was an echo echoing in his mind, the fox was aggrieved and closed himself. Outside. Seeing Shinakushina's blood-red tentacles suddenly retract, Minato said with some worry, Shinakushina, you're not cursing the QB again, are you? After all, it's a combination of ominous and hatred, what if? Suddenly, a red tail jumped out from behind Shinakushina, dancing wildly in the air. The tip of the tail pointed to Minato for a while, and pointed to the Naruto rock outside. It seemed very excited. Minato looked at the tail with a stunned face, and after a while he asked awkwardly, Shinakushina, what is it saying? The translator, Kushina, had a strange look on her face. QB said that it's not the embodiment of hatred and ominous. It's just that we humans are afraid of its strength, so we put this name on its head. When it fights with other tailed beasts, it deliberately avoids human gathering places. It also said that the most hateful people are the first Sama and Uchiha Madara. It was sleeping at home, but one of them inexplicably took it out and beat it, saying that it was too dangerous. The other one is even more disgusting, putting a layer of blue armor on it, and then went to fight with the first Sama, causing it to be beaten again. Finally, Mito-sama said that the first Sama and Uchiha Madara are gone, and no one in this world can balance the QB, and worried that it will retaliate against humans because of the previous things, so it is simply sealed forever. Minato was speechless. Why did it sound like the strongest tailed beast had such a miserable experience? They were caught and beaten up without doing anything. After being beaten up, they became mounts. After being mounts, they were beaten up again. After being beaten up, they were even imprisoned forever. If it were him, he wouldn't be able to bear this grievance either. In the end, Shinakushina was a little embarrassed. She tapped her cheek with her slender index finger. Don't be angry. I'll listen to you 5 out of 10 times in the future. All of a sudden, the chakra aura on the tail surged. Then, the tail split into 9 small tails that swayed in the air. Cold sweat dripped from Minato's forehead. The moment he saw the 9 tails, he almost thought that QB had opened the seal in extreme anger. Shinakushina shook her head firmly. No, 6 times at most. Hearing this, one of the 9 little tails hesitantly retracted back. The remaining few waved crazily, indicating that their attitude was very firm. However, this time Shinakushina didn't give in. Instead, she slammed the table and shouted, You have to know that you lost my money. If you have money, I will listen to you every time. Whoosh. At this time, Shinakushina suddenly burst out from behind her. The tail violently slammed towards Shinakushina's head. Minato's pupils contracted violently. Just as he was about to grab Shinakushina and run away, he saw that the tail stopped steadily behind Shinakushina's head and swayed slightly. It seemed a little flattering and humble. This, is it fanning Shinakushina? Minato was stunned. In the eyes of the world, the tailed beast was more terrible than a natural disaster, but for a little money, it was wagging its tail? No one would believe such a thing even if it was said out loud. Garashi watched the show and suddenly said, Shinakushina, Nasen, didn't QB simulate the Bijudama last time and help us complete the structure of Rasengan? For my sake, can you increase the number of times you can use it again? In the original track of history, Rasengan was inspired by Minato's Bijudama. Therefore, after using the love of a friend to influence a certain big orange, Garashi was crazy enough to trick QB into becoming a tool fox. Seeing Garashi's words, Shinakushina reluctantly nodded, but she still reluctantly muttered. Other people have dogs and tear down their houses, but I have a fox. Of course this was a joke. After all, she only had the right to use this big house. Kyubi didn't care about Shina Kushina's poisonous tongue at all. He even stretched out a tail and patted Garashi's shoulder. "Young man, you're very smart." Garashi asked in a timely manner. "Shina Kushina, listen, can you help me ask Kyubi why they deliberately avoid human gathering places? Normally, they don't take the initiative to attack humans, isn't that friendly enough?" Shina Kushina was stunned. Yes, deliberately avoiding human gathering places, this kind of kindness seems a bit too friendly. Could it be that the bad fox is lying to me? But soon she got a response from Kyubi. He said that this is a promise to an old man, but when I asked him who the old man was, he refused to speak. Garashi lowered his eyelids and secretly thought, Kyubi doesn't know the current situation of Rikudu Sennin? Or has Rikudu Sennin's chakra not appeared even once in the past 1,000 years? He originally thought that Kyubi, who was the most sensitive of chakra, might be able to sense something strange. Seeing that Garashi and Minato didn't respond, Shina Kushina couldn't help but speak up for Kyubi. Although he didn't say who the old man was, I don't think he's lying. Minato nodded slightly. He actually didn't think that way either. As Garashi had told them before, growth came from experience, not just time. Kyubi, although it had lived for more than 1,000 years, it had almost never interacted with humans. Its entire life was spent sleeping and fighting. Well, in recent decades, it could also be counted as being beaten and imprisoned. Under such circumstances, he would never believe that Kyubi was a scheming person. Especially after witnessing Kyubi's performance just now, he was even more certain of a guess in his heart. Actually, Kyubi is quite a naive and silly fox. Seeing that the game had stopped, the new gambling monster Kurama waved its tail discontentedly. Then Shina Kushina's mouth twitched and said, Kyubi wants you to hurry up and shuffle the cards. No one is allowed to leave today or it will destroy the world. Garashi couldn't help but smile. So, we're still playing cards for world peace? Minato sighed sadly. With this troublesome fox, how can he invite Shina Kushina out for a date in the future? P.S. Although a settlement has been reached, Shina Kushina hasn't unlocked the seal, so she shouldn't be regarded as a perfect Jinchuriki. And even if she is a perfect Jinchuriki, it doesn't matter because Kyubi's perfect Jinchuriki only perceives good and evil, not mind reading. And Garashi does have good intentions. With the belief that everyone is his wings, of course he wants everyone to get better and better. Chapter 60. The next day, Naruto's building. Sandaime, who was dealing with government affairs, suddenly stopped and asked without raising his head. Speak, what's the matter? In the shadow of the room, an Umbu ninja came out. Naruto-sama, ninja school student Shimizu Garashi requests to see you. In order to reflect Konoha's pro-people policy, the Hokage has never refused similar requests. It is precisely because he knows this that he, as an Umbu, didn't directly refuse. Shimizu Garashi? Although he was a little confused, Sandaime still smiled and said, Well, let me see the little genius of Wood Leaf. Yes. The Umbu ninja replied and retreated to let the others let go of the blockade. Soon, Garashi stepped into Naruto's office. Little Garashi, what can I do for you? Sandaime asked with a smile. Uncle Sarutobi, I want to exchange ninjutsu with you. Garashi said politely. Hearing Garashi's kind words, Sandaime's smile became bigger, but he immediately had some doubts. Didn't Orochimaru give you ninjutsu? Garashi shook his head. The ninjutsu from last time, Orochimaru-sama gave it to us. Last time? Sandaime instantly understood Garashi's meaning. He smiled and took out his cigarette. You can already develop ninjutsu? You are worthy of being the genius of Wood Leaf. Asuma is also good, but compared to you he is really far behind. No, Asuma is also very hard-working. That's true. Sandaime nodded with relief. Although Asuma's character is still a little jumpy compared to before, he is indeed a lot better. Sure enough, the influence of friends is still very important. Sandaime raised his hat and slightly leaned forward. Little Garashi, what level of ninjutsu do you want to exchange? Is it a D-class ninjutsu or a C-class ninjutsu? The Sandaime pondered in his heart and laughed inwardly. No matter how mature he is, he's still a child who wants to show off. Ninjutsu of this level can be exchanged with the teachers of the school. In his opinion, Garashi should want to show off, so he deliberately came here. However, he did not point it out. It's normal for children to like to show off, they shouldn't kill their enthusiasm. Sandaime thought, and then he heard Garashi say, I want to exchange for an A-class ninjutsu, Hashiman Tanku. Oh, the 8 inner hidden gates. The third generation nodded. Then, his eyes widened and 2 streams of white smoke came out of his nose. 8 gates, cough cough. Sandaime put the opium pipe away and looked at Garashi's bright eyes. Little Garashi, you can only exchange for ninjutsu of the same level as the one you developed. Garashi blinked innocently. But Brother Minato said that this technique should be at the level of A rank. Minato? The third generation's eyes also looked serious. If it wasn't for the fact that the years after the war were relatively peaceful, Minato should have been qualified to be promoted to Jonin. Even he said so, it seems to be true. Thinking of this, Sandaime's heart was a little excited. A-class ninjutsu has great strategic value, but what he values more is that among the people who comprehended the will of fire, there is a genius like Garashi. This kind of talent, even Orochimaru and Minato can't compare with him. Minato is 9 years older than Garashi. If they can do it one after the other, maybe Wood Leaf's real heyday can be created by them. After calming himself down, Sandaime smiled and said, "Little Shushi, show me the technique you've developed." "Well, but this technique is actually developed by me and Brother Minato together," Garashi said as a blue chakra ball appeared in his palm. The ball rotated so fast that there was a breeze around his palm. This kind of technique that can change the form to the extreme, for Garashi who has excellent control over chakra, the difficulty is lower than the nature of the technique. More importantly, he also participated in the development of the Rasengan. The derivation process is there. If he can't understand it, then it would be an insult to his IQ. Sandaime's attention also moved away from Garashi and focused on the chakra ball in Garashi's palm. With his eyesight, it is not difficult to see the power and potential of this technique. High-speed rotation, high-density chakra compression, can burst out great power in an instant. Irregular chakra flow, can make the enemy's chakra chaotic for a short time. The most important thing is the potential. Sandaime's eyes were dignified. Just the form change has reached this level. If the nature change is added, there is no doubt that it will reach the level of arcane. Seeing Sandaime in a daze, Garashi asked nervously, "Sarutobi-san, has this technique reached the level of A-class?" After a few more shouts, the Sandaime finally came back to his senses. He looked at Shushi with a burning gaze and laughed heartily. "Of course this technique has reached the A level, but do you really intend to give it to the village?" Sandaime narrowed his eyes and said temptingly, "If you keep it for yourself, it can be your unique ninjutsu." Garashi tilted his head and wondered, "And then?" Sandaime was startled and asked again, "Don't you want your reputation to spread all over the ninja world? Moreover, the fewer people who use this technique, the less information the enemy will have about you." Garashi was silent for a moment and replied with a firm tone, "Compared with the illusory things like reputation, I would rather increase the village's combat power. As for the information, it is nothing. Medical ninja is the object of everyone's protection, so the stronger everyone is, the safer I will be, right?" Hearing Garashi's answer, the smile in Sandaime's eyes was so thick that it almost couldn't disappear. What a good child. However, the village will never treat its own people unfairly. If you hand in a ninjutsu, in addition to exchanging a ninjutsu of the same level, you can also collect a part of the contribution points from others when they exchange your ninjutsu. Garashi wasn't surprised by this. Only enough benefits can attract families to hand over ninjutsu, and for the village, contribution points are just a matter of time. Garashi, later you will record the principles of this technique, the method of practice, the flow of chakra, and the hand seals on the scroll. Halfway through his words, Sandaime suddenly froze. Wait, Garashi didn't make any hand seals just now, right? Garashi, is this a ninjutsu without hand seals? Seeing Sandaime's ferocious face, Garashi weakly replied, "Must there be a hand seal? Then why don't we symbolically put our palms together?" The Sandaime almost choked on his own saliva. He looked at Shushi and thought about Asuma, the troublemaker in his family. Originally, he was quite satisfied with Asuma's growth, but now his mood suddenly changed. It's time to let Asuma feel the depth of a father's love. Chapter 61. After calming down, Sandaime happily took a puff of his cigarette. "You gave me a big surprise, little Garashi." Garashi shook his head and said, humbly, "In fact, I only gave the inspiration and idea, the rest of the work was done by Nisan." Sandaime smiled. Of course he understood the difference between the two. "By the way, what do you want to exchange for?" "Hashiman Tanku." "Hashiman Tanku." Sandaime's right hand stopped groping in the drawer. "Why did you suddenly think of exchanging for a taijutsu?" Garashi calmly said the explanation he had prepared. In fact, Tsunade-sensei told me the importance of taijutsu a long time ago, but I didn't pay much attention to it. Sandame's expression was a bit subtle. In the records of the Umbu department, it was mentioned that Garashi's taijutsu is quite violent and fierce. Even a genin who specializes in taijutsu is not necessarily comparable to him. This kind of practice result, and he didn't pay much attention to it? But, a genius, it's understandable. Sandame nodded slightly. Just like Sarutobi, didn't he learn the fire system and master the other 6 systems? But on the night of Yunin's attack, because my taijutsu was too bad, not only did I cause Shinakushina's sister to go berserk, but I also put Asma in danger, so I really realized my previous mistakes. If you want to save people, you must first ensure your own safety, and to ensure your own safety, you must have no weaknesses. Sandame's mouth twitched slightly. Isn't this a bit too much? Having no weaknesses means comprehensive development. And the result of comprehensive development is either omnipotence or mediocrity. But, a genius, it's understandable. Sandame comforted himself again. As for why it's Hashiman Tanku, in fact, I heard from Dai that the opening of the Hashiman Tanku can lift the restrictions of the brain and let the body exert 100% of its ability. At that time I was thinking, since the opening of the door can lift the restrictions of the brain, can it be used to inspire inspiration? Ahem. Sandame-sama really choked this time. The techniques that others use to fight, you use them to develop ninjutsu? However, geniuses... No, even geniuses can't understand this. Even I, Sarutobi, wouldn't dare to play like this. Thinking of this, Sandame organized his words. Opening the door is very dangerous. At least you can't do that now. Garashi said dejectedly, I know. The Sandame was still a little worried, so he added, unless you can reach the level of the first generation in the future, don't try it, understand? At the very least, one must have an immortal body as a prerequisite. Tisk, it's really not easy for someone like me to raise my comprehension ability. After Garashi sighed in his heart, he knew when to stop. He nodded and said, Uncle Yuanfei, I won't take the risk. Sandame nodded. Then do you want to change to another technique? Garashi was silent for a moment, then he shook his head and said, No, I don't need any other techniques right now. Moreover, I also want to exchange for the Hashiman Tanku. I want to practice genjutsu and medical ninjutsu when I reach a bottleneck so I can get inspiration by practicing taijutsu. Sandame knocked on the table with his opium pipe. The essence of any technique is inseparable from the chakra, hand seals, meridians, nature changes, shape changes, and so on. In theory, what you said can be done. Do you want to ask why the teachers in the school never talked about this with you? I don't want to ask. It's because of the difference, isn't it? Shushi muttered under his breath. Sandame took a puff of his cigarette and said, The differences between people do exist. Some people can't even remember all 12 handprints, let alone the combination of the handprints. Under such circumstances, it's impossible for them to comprehend the cultivation by analogy. Even if they're geniuses, it's very difficult for them to study other techniques. Only a few people can really set foot in this field. Seeing the reserved look in Sandame's eyes, Shushi suddenly understood why Sandame had said so much nonsense. The first dames would release, the second Naruto's forbidden technique, and the third dame's ninjutsu professor was proficient in 7 attributes. This is actually a very powerful achievement, but only a few people can realize it. He occasionally wants to listen to flattery. No wonder Asma always said that his father is cold on the outside. Thinking of this, Garashi exclaimed. So it's so difficult? Did anyone in Woodleaf do it? Sandame said with a smile. Aha, this old man has a little experience in this field. I heard from the adults that you can use 7 attributes of ninjutsu. Are you proficient in every attribute? Almost. At least I can use all of Woodleaf's A-level ninjutsu. Embezzlement? Garashi's heart fiercely flashed this thought, then he quickly blamed himself. How can I think like this? Naruto-sama obviously wanted to protect Woodleaf, so he took the risk to practice the ninjutsu in the Book of Seals. So, if I become Naruto in the future, I must learn from Sandame. Thinking of this, Garashi said excitedly. Amazing, even the first dame couldn't do this, right? Uncle Sarutobi, can you guide me in this field? Sandame smiled brightly. I can only tell you some of my own experience, such as the similarities and differences between different systems of jutsu, chakra and hand seals, or the differences in their shape and nature changes. As for the rest, you can only rely on yourself to explore. After bragging, Sandame finally remembered the business, coughed, and took out the Book of Seals from the drawer. With the experience of exchanging for the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, you should be more familiar with the process. After recording the Hashiman Tanku, I will apply the sealing jutsu on you. Garashi naturally understood. If there was no sealing jutsu, the important strategic resources of the village would be leaked. Understanding was one thing, but the feeling of having a seal placed on him was still very unpleasant. Stepping out of the Naruto building, it was already dusk. Looking at the reflection of the building, Shushi muttered to himself, "My talent lies in learning, summarizing, and even innovating. It's not that I'm not talented, it's just that the cost-performance ratio of developing a technique is too low." With the idea I provided, Kyuubi's demonstration, and Minato's talent, it still took him 2 months to develop Rasengan. And in the manga, it even took him 3 years to complete this technique. If I waste my time on this, at most I'll reach the level of Naruto, and it's impossible to achieve my goal. My ambition is too big, but my current ability is not enough to support my ambition. If I want to do this, well, it seems that I'm a bit impetuous. Thinking too far will make people unable to see the road under their feet. Garashi took a deep breath, retracted his gaze, suppressed his ambition, and walked away. The next step should be the Book of Seals, right? Although I have some ideas, there are still a lot of restrictions if I want to implement it. Maybe it's time to slow down a little. At the same time, in Naruto's office, Sandaime was looking at the Book of Seals on the side. Using the Hashiman Tanku to remove the restrictions of the brain to stimulate inspiration? What a bold and interesting idea. Perhaps it's this creative thinking that allowed him to develop Rasengan at this age. But is this really useful? Well, anyway, the first 3 gates are safe areas, so it's better to try it. For the safety of the village, it's worth the risk. Sandaime put his right hand on the crystal ball. This time, I must successfully improve the telescope jutsu. Chapter 62. Under the candlelight, a sleepy conversation could be heard. Jiraiya-sensei? There's something I'd like to ask Jiraiya-sama for help. That's really troublesome. Ever since Sensei's Legend of the Counterattack ended. Wait, didn't you say that it was only halfway through the story? It seems that after Tsunade-sama found out about some of the plot in the book, she chased Sensei for 10 blocks. Sensei was so scared that he quickly ended the book. Listening to their meaningless conversation, Shina Kushina's voice came from the side. If you don't do something, Kurama is going to go berserk. Minato squinted his eyes sleepily and smiled bitterly. It's already so late, do you still want to continue? Even Shushi felt a sense of helplessness. He thought to himself that he should quickly develop a few 2-player games and push the blame to Minato. Shina Kushina translated with a strange expression. Kurama said that it can share chakra with you and ensure that you'll be energized and won't feel sleepy at night. It also said that you two are genius ninjas, so you should quickly develop a ninjutsu that doesn't need to sleep, or an independent consciousness clone technique that can play cards with it. After that, Kyuubi stretched out his tail and slapped Garashi and Minato. In an instant, a powerful force rushed into their bodies. For Kyuubi's almost infinite chakra, this amount of chakra was nothing. But for the two who were not proficient in chakra, this force almost made them explode. This power. Even Garashi couldn't calm down. He was still thinking about how to get more fox fur from Kyuubi, but he didn't expect that Kyuubi would give up without doing anything. It's a pity that I haven't learned the Yin seal, otherwise I could store this power. But it's enough to expand my chakra capacity. After noticing that his chakra capacity was slightly expanded, Garashi's heart was filled with a strong sense of joy. Except for some natural chakra monsters, normal people can only rely on daily practice to increase the upper limit of their chakra capacity. It's just like in a dense jungle, relying on daily pruning and cutting to open a narrow path. But Kyuubi's power is like a road roller in the jungle. After opening up a new path, it will repair the road that might be crushed. For ordinary people, this is actually a very dangerous thing. If they're not careful, their meridians may be damaged to a certain extent. However, for Shushi, the benefits of doing so far outweighed the risks. After all, he was confident that he would be able to repair Kyuubi's meridians, so this simple level of damage. Although it's because I have too little chakra, the effect is obvious, but this is enough. Compared to those techniques that can be developed by talent and methods, the limitations of my body's aptitude is my biggest obstacle. Thinking of this, Garashi, guiltily, withdrew the idea of developing a 2-person game. Tomorrow I'll start preparing for a new 3-person game. Well, I'll start with caring for the empty nest fox. On the other hand, Minato's face was red from the sudden huge power, and it took a while before he slowly calmed down. Seeing that Kyuubi was still wagging her tail, Minato had no choice but to compromise. Okay, a pair of 6. Minato explained to Garashi as he played his cards. Sensei wants to write a new book, but because he doesn't have any ideas, he has been collecting materials on the streets these days. A pair of 10. Hearing this, Garashi had an ominous feeling in his heart. Collecting materials? Ace bomb. After Shina Kushina finished playing her cards, she was stunned and immediately went berserk. Idiot, how can you play an ace bomb at the beginning of the game? Seeing that Shina Kushina and Kyubi were quarreling again, Minato also took the time to explain to Garashi. It seems that Tsunade-sama said that Sensei's books are trash that can't be sold, then Sensei swore that he must write a best-selling book that everyone would like to read. So, Sensei has been experiencing life on the streets these days, wanting to know what topics are the most popular. If you want to find Sensei, you can only try your luck on the streets. Shushi sighed helplessly. Could it be that he had sped up the process of a certain event? That would be a serious sin. But the good news was that he roughly knew where to find Jiraiya. The next day, outside the Woodleaf Women's Bathhouse, a handsome ninja squatted in the grass with a complicated look in his eyes, fighting in his mind. As a great writer, it's reasonable to look for materials in life with an eye that's good at finding beauty. Jiraiya, wait, did you forget that you were seriously injured by Tsunade when you peeked at the women's bathhouse? No, I want to dedicate myself to art. Nothing can stop an author's determination to create. But if I'm found out, I won't be able to find a woman in the future, right? Forget it, if I can't find a woman, then so be it. Women will only affect the speed of my hand seals. Thinking of this, the handsome ninja walked valiantly to the artist's battlefield, with high spirits. But at this moment, a question came from the grass. Jiraiya, Sama, why did you change into Orochimaru-sama's appearance? The handsome ninja stopped in his tracks and turned his head stiffly. I'm Orochimaru. Listen, hissed. Looking at Orochimaru sticking out his tongue in a wretched manner, Garashi sighed helplessly. Jiraiya, Sama, a person's face and body can change, but their eyes and temperament can't. As expected, even Orochimaru's wretched face can't hide my melancholy eyes and noble temperament. Orochimaru laughed and changed back into Jiraiya's appearance. Jiraiya, Sama, were you peeking at someone else's bathhouse? Garashi quietly watched the ninja's performance and then killed him with a single blow. Ahem. Jiraiya, who was laughing loudly, suddenly choked as if he was going to cough out his lungs. After a while, he calmed down and shouted with his eyes wide open. Collecting material can't be counted as peeping. Can the author's business be counted as peeping? It doesn't count? Garashi tilted his head in confusion. Then I'll go back and ask Tsunade-sensei. Seeing Garashi turn around and leave, Jiraiya's legs almost gave out. He hurriedly pulled Garashi back. Don't bother Tsunade-sensei with such a small matter. With that, he hurriedly changed the topic. By the way, what are you doing here? Garashi said without hesitation. I'm here to see Jiraiya-sama. Jiraiya's eyes widened. How did you know I'm here? Don't tell me the old man's telescope technique has become stronger again. Jiraiya suddenly felt a little depressed. Don't tell me I have to set up a barrier to go to the bathroom in the future? Garashi blinked and replied, Tsunade-sensei said that if you want to see me, you can go to the bathhouse more often. Tsunade, this violent woman, knows so much about me. Jiraiya panicked at first, but soon he began to fantasize. She pays so much attention to me. Don't tell me she likes me? Chapter 63. Could it be that she tried so hard to kill me before, not because I wrote her as the heroine, but because I didn't write enough? Then my next book, Just as Jiraiya's imagination was running wild, Garashi suddenly asked, Jiraiya, Sama, do you like Tsunade-sensei? Jiraiya was so scared that he even spat out his saliva. He looked at Garashi in horror and waved his hand. How could I like that violent woman? This is not funny at all. Looking at Jiraiya's flustered look, Garashi sighed in his heart. It seems that I have to work part-time as a neighborhood committee ant. Garashi was very clear that lust was a man's nature. Especially for a veteran like Jiraiya, he couldn't be persuaded or beaten to change his mind. There were only two ways to fundamentally cut off the appearance of those bad books. One was to castrate him. The second was to put shackles on this free and unrestrained man. Thinking of this, Garashi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. In order to prevent high-quality tools like Kakashi from being poisoned, I really went through a lot of trouble. Seeing Shuishi's silence, Jiraiya felt a little guilty. Actually, I'm not saying that Tsunade isn't good. It's just that I can't stop. I'm a wanderer and I will only stop when I'm about to die. Garashi blinked. Even when Tsunade-sensei is hurt? Jiraiya glared and shouted subconsciously, who dares? Shushi chuckled meaningfully. Lungzi? Seeing Garashi's strange gaze, Jiraiya blushed and pretended to cough twice. Haha, who can bully her? Garashi sighed. If it was the previous Tsunade-sensei, of course it wouldn't be a problem, but Jiraiya-sama, you should also know sensei's current situation, right? Jiraiya rubbed his hands and smiled. Isn't there Sarutobi-sensei and Orochimaru? Shushi looked straight at Jiraiya. Seeing Jiraiya's guilty conscience, Shushi said, well, I'll pretend that you don't know anything. I can feel that sensei wants to leave the village. If sensei's hemophobia is known by the enemy ninja village, they will definitely not miss this opportunity. Jiraiya was silent for a long time and finally he smiled bitterly. You want to push Tsunade to me? Garashi smiled softly. I just think that if it's you, Jiraiya-sama, you should be able to wake sensei up from that nightmare. Hearing Garashi mention the nightmare, Jiraiya pinched his eyebrows, and then sat on the grass next to him in a very free and easy posture. Come and sit down. Garashi looked like a good boy and sat opposite Jiraiya. Actually, Tsunade used to have a lover, his name is Kato Duan, he is… I know. Jiraiya's eyes widened. Tsunade even told you this? Garashi shook his head. I know from Shizune. Oh, the little girl beside Tsunade. Jiraiya said, and suddenly his facial muscles twitched. Wait, you told me so much, don't tell me you want me to be your little girlfriend's bodyguard. Garashi said helplessly, Jiraiya-sama, what are you talking about? I'm only 6 years old. Jiraiya squinted his eyes. You know you're only 6 years old, right? You're acting like an emotional expert. Garashi spread his hands. Although it may be rude to say this, Jiraiya-sama, you probably haven't talked to girls as much as I have, right? Gotcha. Jiraiya covered his chest, feeling as if something cracked here. Please try to recall how many girls have spoken to you for more than 10 sentences? Asked Soishi, seizing the opportunity to ask. Jiraiya opened his mouth blankly. Obviously, he already knew the answer in his heart. Not to mention 10 sentences, the only girl who has spoken to me more than 3 sentences seems to be Tsunade, right? Thinking of this, Jiraiya suddenly woke up. Don't I even have a choice in this life? Seeing Jiraiya's worried look, Garashi muttered in his heart, there really isn't anyone who has spoken more than 10 sentences, I was going to set it at 30 sentences. Jiraiya hesitated for a while and said, tell me, what is the position of broken in Tsunade's heart? It should be very high, after all, memories will beautify a person's image. Jiraiya's old face fell. Then I'd better, Garashi said with some disappointment. What's the point of arguing with a dead person? Or, do you want Tsunade-sensei to be the kind of person who will forget her memories? Jiraiya suddenly realized, yes, if Tsunade really forgot the past, would she still be the Tsunade he knew? Seeing that the time was right, Garashi launched the final blow. Let me remind you again, although there are not many girls who have spoken to you, there are many men who want to communicate with Tsunade-sensei. Jiraiya's face darkened, but he had to admit that as long as she was not afraid of domestic violence, Tsunade was indeed much more popular than him. Thinking of this, Jiraiya couldn't hold back anymore. No, it seems that this sage has to take the initiative to attack. Do you want to give her something? But I don't seem to have anything to give her. Give her a toad? Or give her my autograph book? Seeing that Jiraiya was eager to die, Garashi quickly stopped him. Jiraiya-sama, I still have something to ask you for help. During this time, you can calm down and think about it. Jiraiya pondered and nodded. You're right, I should think about it. Tell me, what do you want? I always feel that he will die miserably. Garashi sighed and said, I hope you can give me a few drops of Mount Miyaboku's toad oil. Well, that's easy. Jiraiya casually agreed but quickly reacted. Wait, Tsunade wants you to learn senjutsu? That's too reckless with your current state. Jiraiya-sama, you misunderstood. Garashi said, it's not me who wants to use it. It's not you? Jiraiya was stunned and immediately showed a lascivious smile. Could it be that Tsunade wants to learn the Shikatsu Forest Senjutsu? I wonder what she looks like when she transforms? Seeing that even Jiraiya thought of the uniform temptation, Shushi hurriedly explained, it's a classmate of mine. One part of his meridians is almost completely broken. It's very difficult to repair it. Only with the most gentle energy can it be possible to reconnect his broken meridians. Gentle? Jiraiya's face was serious. But do you know that the extreme of gentleness is violence? Or, natural energy is too gentle. Once you come in contact with it, you and nature will truly become one. Chapter 64. Garashi's expression remained unchanged as he nodded. Tsunade-sensei has already told me about the risks involved. Jiraiya asked seriously, then do you still plan to continue? Garashi did not answer directly but talked about something else. I heard from Tsunade-sensei that there are two prerequisites for practicing senjutsu. One is a large number of chakra, and the other is a strong perseverance that never gives up. Although he did not understand the meaning of Garashi's words, Jiraiya still followed his words. This is only the threshold to understand natural energy. The subsequent refinement of chakra requires extremely fine control of chakra and strong spiritual control. However, in your current situation, you really only need to consider these 2 points. Garashi nodded. A large number of chakra is easy. I just need to borrow Kyuubi's chakra from Shina Kushina-san. After the incident that night, Kyuubi's Jinchuriki was no longer a secret among the higher-ups. Jiraiya was surprised. Wait, that little girl can already use Kyuubi's power skillfully? Garashi smiled slightly. Yes, maybe Kyuubi and Shina Kushina-san's personality are more compatible. It's over. Not only is her personality like Tsunade's, even her strength is about to catch up. Jiraiya thought with some schadenfreude. Minato, this kid, is finally about to experience the bitterness of a sensei. Maybe, it's time to teach him my reserved lesson of avoiding being hunted down. Seeing Jiraiya fall into fantasy, Garashi did not care and continued, although the borrowed power is not my own, I'm not going to practice senjutsu. If it's just resisting the erosion of natural energy, I should be able to do it. Jiraiya nodded slightly. The nature of natural energy is too strong. It's like dripping paint into water. If the amount of water is too little, it will instantly assimilate and change color. And Kyuubi's power is used to resist this process. But you have to understand that the strength of nature energy lies not only in the instant of assimilation when it invades the body, but also in the subtle changes after that. If you don't have a strong enough will, you won't be able to avoid being devoured by nature energy. Garashi naturally understood that this was not an exaggeration. If natural energy could be controlled so easily, immortal arts would have long become the mainstream of this world. Although I'm very confident in my own willpower, this isn't my problem alone. To be on the safe side, I'd like to ask Lord Jiraiya to test both me and Shuei Mu. Jiraiya scratched his head. It seems that Tsunade also told you about Fukasaku-sama. Indeed, Fukasaku-sama's dog-beating stick can beat natural energy out of your body. However, it can only be done before you undergo surgery. Garashi nodded seriously. That's enough. Then I'll have to trouble you, Lord Jiraiya. Wait, I have another condition. Jiraiya's eyes rippled as he hugged Garashi and laughed. As long as it's something I can do, I'll do my best. Garashi did not make any promises. I saw it at the last gathering. Those little girls all wanted to surround you. Forget about them, but even that violent big-breasted Tsunade and that violent little pepper Shina Kushina were so nice to you. There must be some trick to it, right? Quick, tell me, how do you please women? Jiraiya's eyes lit up. Only in this aspect he almost worshipped Garashi. This was the treatment he dreamed of. Garashi unconsciously touched his face and asked blankly, do I need to please women for this kind of thing? The smile on Jiraiya's face gradually disappeared, and he immediately asked with a ferocious expression, do you mean that you don't have to do anything and there will be more than a dozen girls surrounding you? Garashi shook his head, of course not. Jiraiya felt a little comforted, and then he heard Garashi say in a matter-of-fact tone, at least you have to reject more than half of the girls, so there will only be a dozen left. Jiraiya. Then Garashi saw Jiraiya's figure getting shorter and shorter. Finally, his whole body bent forward and knelt on the ground. The next day would leave hospital. Jiraiya? I'm here. Seeing that Jiraiya had been giggling since they met today, Tsunade said helplessly, if you're still angry about what happened last time, okay, I apologize. I really shouldn't have said that your books are trash. But you have to remember it. Next time you dare to write in your books. Seeing that Tsunade mentioned the books so quickly, Jiraiya winked and said, you don't have to say it, I understand. What's with this wretched giggle? Tsunade's mouth twitched. She felt that Jiraiya was not right today. Forget it, this guy doesn't feel right in the first place. Thinking of this, Tsunade looked to the side. Shushi, are you ready? Garashi clenched his fist hard, and the orange-red chakra almost overflowed from between his fingers. I feel very good now and I can start the trial at any time. Behind him, Mizuki looked at Garashi with infinite longing in his eyes. 2 Sannin, and this incomparably powerful bijou chakra, such a luxurious lineup. Naturally, he did not have such a big face. The only reason they're here is because of Shushi. Therefore, Mizuki did not have the slightest idea of gratitude in his heart. Only Garashi was the only light he could see. Tsunade looked over Garashi. About the Jinchuriki, we will set a seal for you later, I hope you can understand. Mizuki nodded indifferently, I know. Seeing that everything was ready, Jiraiya began to summon. Not long after, a toad-like old man with a wooden stick in his hand and a cloak, who looked a little thin and old, appeared in front of everyone. Boss, I'll have to trouble you again this time. Jiraiya greeted respectfully. It's good to come out occasionally, but I have to go back before dinner, otherwise the children's mother will be angry. Fukasaku Senin's tone was peaceful, and he did not mind being summoned. Jiraiya smiled, it won't take too long, I just want to ask you to test the qualifications of the two children. Garashi and Mizuki, who had already known the other party's information from Jiraiya, hurriedly saluted, Fukasaku-sama, please. Fukasaku Sennin knocked on the ground with a wooden stick, squinted his eyes and looked a little unhappy. Jiraiya, are you kidding me? Such a small child, even chakra is not. This powerful chakra aura is. Without anyone's reminder, he turned his eyes to Shinakushina. It turned out to be that guy, Tisuke. It seems that this old guy is really outdated, there is such a way. Chapter 65. But after looking at them for a while, he shook his head. External forces can only be used as a reference. If it's not your own strength, you can't practice senjutsu. Jiraiya hurriedly explained, the two of them are not trying to practice senjutsu. They are planning to use natural energy to complete a surgery. Surgery? The thoughts of young people are getting more and more incomprehensible. Fukasaku Sennin was amazed and then asked, tell me, what do you want me to do? You just need to knock out the natural energy in their bodies when they show signs of frog transformation. That's easy. Seeing that Fukasaku Sennin agreed, Jiraiya took out a small bottle containing a golden liquid. This is the toad oil from Mount Mayaboku. Can help you sense natural energy. What you have to do is to ensure that you will not be eroded by natural energy with your own beliefs and perseverance. Fukasaku Sennin reminded, once the toad oil leaves the environment of Mount Mayaboku, it will quickly vaporize. Even with my simulated environment, it will not take more than 5 minutes. Seeing that the two children's expressions were normal, Jiraiya nodded secretly and carefully wiped the toad oil on their hands. The rest of the people had heard about the horror of natural energy from Jiraiya. When they saw the golden liquid dripping on Garashi's hand, their breathing unconsciously quickened. However, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 1 minute passed, not to mention Garashi, even Mizuki was well maintained. Seeing that everyone was looking at him strangely, Jiraiya shook the small bottle and muttered, it doesn't make sense. Even the toad oil from Mount Mayaboku will expire? Just as Jiraiya was thinking about whether he should try it himself, Fukasaku Sennin, who was standing on the bedside table, jumped up and hit Mizuki, who was showing signs of frog transformation, back to normal. 2 minutes and 13 seconds. Tsunade took the initiative to report the time. It's just the first try and he can hold on for 2 minutes. How rare. However, the other child is even more terrifying. He is perfectly compatible with the profound meaning of stillness. Fukasaku Sennin was also extremely shocked. Even in his more than 800 years of experience, he had almost never seen such a powerful talent. Time passed little by little. Just as the effect of the toad oil was gradually dissipating, Fukasaku Sennin suddenly said, success, he can sense the natural energy. 4 minutes and 47 seconds. Jiraiya couldn't believe his eyes when he reported the time. The first time he came into contact with nature energy, not only was he not corroded by it, he even managed to sense it within 5 minutes. It's gone. Garashi opened his eyes and muttered, only 13 seconds? Seeing that Garashi was still not satisfied, Jiraiya shouted frantically, do you know that this result is already ridiculous? Even back then, back then I was just a little bit worse than you. I don't know. Garashi shook his head honestly, his eyes resolute. But I know one thing. The natural energy that I've sensed in these 13 seconds is definitely not enough for surgery. Are you still thinking of your companions at this time? Jiraiya's frantic expression froze, and he patted Garashi's shoulder with some emotion. Perhaps it's this belief that allowed you to surpass us. Shinakushina was also relieved. Speaking of surgery, Garashi, how long will it take for you to complete the surgery? About 10 minutes. Garashi muttered, However, the 3 parts that need natural energy to repair should only take 3 minutes. In other words, you need to comprehend the natural energy within 2 minutes. Tsunade looked at Minato. And him, you need to be free from the erosion of natural energy within 3 minutes. Otherwise, there's no way for Fukasaku-sama to expel the natural energy during the surgery. Garashi's expression was solemn. That's not enough. The time limit is too much. It's best to leave half a minute of safety. This is clearly my business. Even I only need to stop at the first stage without being eroded. But Garashi wants to take the risk to try the second stage of natural energy. Mizuki's heart was moved, and his gaze became firm and sharp. I will definitely do it. Jiraiya looked at Fukasaku Senin. Boss, I may have to trouble you with these 2 children. Fukasaku Senin smiled and waved the wooden stick. It's rare to meet 2 children who have the talent to practice senjutsu. It's not bad to play with them. Half a day later, the sky gradually darkened. At this time, Garashi and Minato had already entered the operating room. Outside. It's hard to imagine that children have such strong perseverance. If it weren't for the restriction of chakra, I'm afraid they would be able to practice senjutsu by now. Fukasaku Senin exclaimed as he looked at the operating room. Fukasaku-sama, are you saying that in a few years when their bodies grow up, they will be qualified to practice senjutsu? Minato asked in surprise. Fukasaku Senin nodded and looked to the side. Little Jiraiya, do you plan to let the child named Garashi practice senjutsu? Jiraiya awkwardly touched his head. Aha, that child is not my disciple. Seeing Jiraiya's gaze drifting to Tsunade, Fukasaku Senin understood. Oh, Shikatsu Linbai picked up a good seedling. Minato asked, what about the child named Mizuki? Although his talent is not as good as Garashi, he should be qualified to practice senjutsu, right? However, the man and the frog were strangely silent. After a while, Jiraiya sighed. I saw a very scary light in that child's eyes. If he learns Sage Mode, I don't know whether it's good or bad. Fukasaku Senin nodded. The child named Garashi, his Jing, is quiet and peaceful. But Mizuki, his Jing, is silent and indifferent. This kind of temperament is not suitable to learn senjutsu of Mount Mayaboku. Ah? Is that so? Minato was a little confused. He was still too inexperienced. He couldn't be as shrewd as the 2 beside him. In fact, even if we don't consider this point, the possibility of him wanting to practice senjutsu is very slim. Fukasaku Senin shook his head helplessly. Compared to a real genius, his physical aptitude is too poor. With his speed of refining chakra, he may not be able to meet the amount of chakra required to practice senjutsu in 10 years. That's indeed a pity. Minato sighed. A person like him wouldn't hold a grudge against Mizuki just because of a few words. At this moment, the sound of the door opening came from the operating room. Everyone turned their heads and saw Garashi and Tsunade walking out side by side. Garashi rarely teased, Minato, don't you think the sun is particularly bright today? Of course it's because I'm standing next to the sun. Looking at Shueishi's heartfelt smile, Shueimu held back the tears at the corners of his eyes and laughed along with Shueisha. Yes, it's really a brilliant sun. Chapter 66. The next day early in the morning. When someone walked into the classroom, cheers instantly resounded throughout the campus. Wow, it's Mizuki. Mizuki is back. Our second year is finally complete. Looking at the bright smiles around him, Mizuki's heart was not moved, but he secretly thought, if I'm too cold, it will make things difficult for Garashi. But what should I do now? If it's Garashi, what will he do? Thinking of this, Mizuki forced a smile. Thank you everyone. Seeing this scene, everyone was incomparably shocked. Mizuki smiled. He can smile. Haha, Mizuki has changed a lot. Although his smile is a bit ugly, it's better than having a cold face. Oh right, Mizuki, tell us how you cured him. Mizuki was already bored, but hearing this, his spirit suddenly rose. You may not know, but Garashi for me, oh, wow. Turning into a frog, is it that exciting? Hearing this burst of exclamations, Asuma was a bit jealous and looked at Garashi with resentful eyes. That's too much, you didn't even bring me along. Ibixi as usual said with a poisonous tongue. Why would I bring you along? To let those doctors practice? Shizen's eyes flashed. Garashi-kun is really amazing, he actually completed such a super difficult surgery. Garashi was a bit helpless. It's still too dangerous. If it wasn't for Mizuki's insistence, I actually wanted to wait until I'm more confident to perform the surgery. Red bit her lower lip and sighed softly. Mizuki doesn't want to fall too far behind us. Garashi leaned back in his chair and stretched his body in a happy mood. Anyway, it's a happy ending. But at this moment, the class's little smart, Takatani Ryosuke rushed in. Big news, Hataki Kakashi from the first year applied for graduation. And he even said that he wants to challenge the class leader again. Hearing this, the whole class was in an uproar. Graduation challenge? What is that 1-second guy trying to do? Does he think that the humiliation from last time wasn't enough? At this time, Takatani Ryosuke shook his head. You don't know yet, but last night, Hataki Kakashi's father committed suicide at home. In the underground chamber of Gen, he actually committed suicide. Danzo raised his eyebrows and immediately sneered, "What a waste, such a person deserves to be a ninja?" The black-robed dragon horse echoed coldly, "Perhaps it's because the difference between a hero and a sinner is too great. That's why I said that Yuan Fei's weak policies are simply poisonous." Danzo said with disdain, "A real ninja shouldn't be bound by unnecessary emotions. Even if he is misunderstood by everyone, he should unswervingly implement his own ninja path." Ryoma Aburame's cold eyes flashed with a trace of heat. Ninjas shouldn't appear under the sun. Only the root, led by Danzo-sama, is the true home of a ninja. Danzo accepted the compliment without any hesitation, turned around and walked deeper into the darkness. "Tell the root members to withdraw temporarily. With my understanding of Sarutobi the Deceiver, he will soon use this as an excuse to attack us." At the same time in Naruto's office, the masked Umbu ninja Mammoth was reporting to Sandame. Sandame's face was sad. "Alas, I killed Tsukumo." Tsukumo's acceptance is higher, so this is still Tsukumo's name," Mammoth said with some excitement. "Naruto-sama, please don't blame yourself too much. Tsukumo's death was entirely due to his own cowardice." Sandame smiled bitterly. "Cowardice, is that how you see him?" Mammoth nodded firmly. "It's just a rumor, it's not worth paying attention to. Moreover, the mistake he made, he should try to make up for it. What kind of ninja would use suicide to escape reality? Such a cowardly and incompetent person is not worthy of Naruto-sama's grief." Sandame took a puff of his cigarette and sighed. "He's not a coward, he's stronger and braver than anyone else." Mammoth was surprised. "Naruto-sama, you?" Sandame looked out of the window with his hands behind his back. "He's too smart but at the same time too kind. With his intelligence, it's impossible for him not to see the trap set by Danzo, but for his companions who wanted to harm him, he willingly jumped into the trap." "You want to harm him?" Mammoth was shocked, but he immediately woke up. Indeed, with the strength of Konoha's White Fang, the success rate of the mission alone would be higher. "I thought that the village wanted him to train new people." Sandame shook his head. "Training new people won't let them perform difficult tasks." Mammoth was surprised again. No wonder he came back from the mission in the past 2 months with injuries. It turned out that he used his own strength to complete the mission? Sandame spat out a thick smoke. "But even a powerful ninja like him can't complete the mission without someone dragging him down every time. So that's how it is, I understand." Mammoth sighed with regret. The mission failed, and the ninjas he rescued are still maliciously slandering him, making him feel desperate. "You still don't understand, Mammoth? The reason he committed suicide is because of me." "How could it be you? You should have heard of it, right? The rumor that I want Tsukumo to be the fourth dame." "Yes, I heard that you want him to be with Orochimaru-sama. In fact, I was more optimistic about Tsukumo at first." Sandame sighed again. "But Danzo's test also made me see one thing, that is, Tsukumo is too kind." Mammoth nodded subconsciously. Even from a bystander's point of view, he felt that Tsukumo was too kind. "I'm not saying that it's not good, but as Naruto it's not good. Naruto is the future of the village, and his excessive kindness will make him make the wrong decision at the most critical moment. For the sake of the village, I can only sit back and watch him make a mistake, and then let him disappear from everyone's sight." Mammoth nodded. Many people in the village were very optimistic about Tsukumo, and if it wasn't for Tsukumo's own mistake, even Naruto-sama would be very passive. "But since Tsukumo is so kind, he should be able to understand your painstaking efforts. Why did he make such an extreme move?" Sandame's eyes were a lot more lonely. "If I'm not wrong, he should think that Danzo and I are suppressing him, and in order to prevent those who support him from breaking with the village, he made this decision." "Is that the truth?" Mammoth sighed with regret. If he could have asked Naruto-sama, this misunderstanding wouldn't have happened. "He won't come to me because Orochimaru is also involved." "Ah? What?" Sandaime smiled bitterly. He may think that Orochimaru represents my will, and that I'm doing this to pave the way for Orochimaru. Mammoth couldn't believe it. How could Orochimaru-sama? Ridiculous, isn't it? Even his own disciple doesn't recognize me as his teacher. Mammoth was silent and didn't speak. Sandaime waved his hand. Go, get rid of those rumors, at least let Tsukumo die as a hero. Mammoth nodded and turned to leave, but Sandaime's voice came from behind. Also, make sure that Root knows their place. Chapter 67. In the evening, the children didn't go home after school, but went to the back of the mountain in groups of 2 or 3. Hatake Kakashi's challenge was a rare tonic in their dull school life. Have you heard? Kakashi has already passed the graduation application during the day. Wow. Is he an official ninja now? That's not important at all, okay? What's important is that he graduated early in his first year of school. This has completely broken the school's record. What a monster, this record is probably impossible to be broken in the future. Listening to the discussions around them, Obito and the others felt that it was unreal. Yesterday they were still classmates, but today they graduated. Is this a genius? Kakashi, that guy. Bordered Soil's mood was a little low. He had to admit that being in the same class with such a monster was too much of a blow. Don't be too discouraged. Shunin patted him on the shoulder and comforted him. You see, I have awakened my Sharingan and studied for a few more years, but I still can't even see Garashi's back. Ah. Bordered Soil's mouth twitched. Awakening my Sharingan is useless, this makes me even more desperate. Metke was excited. I don't know who will win this battle? Bordered Soil said without hesitation. Of course it will be Garashi-senpai. However, this time there were different voices around them. It's really hard to say this time. You don't know yet, Hatake Kakashi has already learned A-level ninjutsu. Hearing the person next to him say this, Bordered Soil was helpless. I am his classmate, I know this better than you, and Kakashi told me that he had already learned the Shadow Clone Jutsu before the last battle. The person next to him was stunned at first, then immediately exclaimed, Amazing! Hatake classmate has already learned such a powerful ninjutsu before entering the school? Bordered Soil was dumbfounded. What I mean is, even if he knows A-level ninjutsu, he still lost to Garashi-senpai. The man waved his hand nonchalantly. That's because Hatake was too careless. If he had used that technique in advance, things wouldn't have turned out this way. Seeing the other parties, you don't understand Kakashi at all. Look, Bordered Soil could only doubt himself. In the distance, Garashi was already quietly waiting. Asuma asked, Garashi, how many seconds do you plan to finish the battle this time? Garashi shook his head solemnly. You think too highly of me. This time it might be a tough battle. Asuma had a look of disdain on his face. Every time you spar you say the same thing to me and then... Asuma didn't want to remember anymore. Seeing Asuma's face full of disbelief, Garashi had to say, don't you understand his beliefs? Graduating early and challenging me, he wants to prove himself, to prove that he is different from Lord White Fang. He who fights with this belief won't be so easily confused by genjutsu. Hearing Garashi mention White Fang, Asuma felt a little regretful. Lord White Fang is really too weak. I used to admire him. Garashi didn't comment on Asuma's weak evaluation, but his eyes calmly looked forward. He's here. Unlike the previous Kakashi, this time he carried a short sword on his back. White Fang's relic. Garashi understood. In the eyes of others, the biggest change in Kakashi should be that he was colder, like a piece of ice, giving people a feeling that strangers shouldn't get close to him. Garashi-senpai, sorry to bother you again. Looking at Garashi, Kakashi's dead eyes seemed to have a little more color. Don't worry, fighting with a genius like you is also a kind of improvement for me. Garashi smiled gently as always. Without too many words, after forming the opposite seal, Kakashi directly pulled out the short sword on his back. Then he rushed forward. Body flicker technique. Chakra gathered on Kakashi's feet, allowing him to move at high speed like a gust of wind, and the distance between the two quickly closed. Garashi began to form seals the moment Kakashi moved. His hands danced so fast that only afterimages could be seen in the eyes of everyone. Genjutsu, Cloud Follower Technique. Kakashi's footsteps paused, and his figure appeared from the illusion. He got hit. Asuma on the side was happy at first, but the next moment he saw Kakashi moving at high speed again. Sure enough, Garashi wasn't too surprised. The current Kakashi should be at his most determined moment. It's not so easy to defeat him with genjutsu. Thinking of this, Garashi's right fist suddenly clenched. The distance between the two was not too far. Even if there was a delay in the middle, it was enough for Kakashi to close in with body flicker technique. This is Hatake family's kenjutsu. Kakashi's eyes were firm, and he held the short sword with both hands and slashed violently. Looking at the blue light flashing on Kakashi's blade, Garashi waved his fist. Lightning released chakra's fluctuation. Is it similar to ninjutsu? Kacha. An arm was thrown up, but the next moment, Garashi's severed arm turned into a wooden block. Substitution technique. Kakashi looked around vigilantly, but suddenly realized that the sunlight above was blocked. No, it's transformation technique. The severed arm turned into Garashi's appearance and punched down. Kakashi didn't have time to dodge and hurriedly blocked with his sword. Clang bang. Under the violent bombardment that was as strong as a mountain, even the blade of the saber was slightly bent. The next moment, Kakashi flew out like a cannonball. Damn, my combat experience is still too little. Kakashi was aware of his shortcomings, but there was nothing he could do. Experience was not something that could be made up for by pure talent. Moreover, it was not up to him to think more. Shueisha leaped into the air and landed on the ground. Kakashi quickly dodged to the side. Boom. Seeing a big hole in the green grass by Garashi's punch, Kakashi's closed heart couldn't calm down. With this kind of power, there's no way to continue after one punch, right? Pure taijutsu is still very difficult to work. Garashi sighed and grabbed a shuriken from the tool bag. Kakashi's pupils contracted slightly. Of course, he knew that the senior's throwing technique was also extremely powerful. The next moment, more than a dozen shuriken shot out like a rain of flowers. Kakashi dodged one by one, but before he could relax, the shuriken that fell to the ground was pulled towards him by the chakra string. What shocked him even more was that the senior's left hand was controlling the chakra string, and his right hand was clenched into a fist, and he rushed towards him. So it can be done like this? Since the senior can do it, then. Kakashi made a seal with both hands, and his left hand suddenly burst out with dazzling lightning, and then his right hand took out the short sword in his mouth. I can do it too. Chapter 69. Looking at Kakashi's attitude of "you can cheat, I can also cheat," the surrounding crowd burst into a fierce exclamation. Is this a genius? This level of skill can be learned at a glance. Both of them are monsters. They can do things we can't even imagine. Wait, what about A-class ninjutsu? Why didn't Kakashi use A-class ninjutsu? What do you know? Multiple shadow clone jutsu will distribute chakra evenly. If you can't defeat the opponent before the clone is exhausted, it means failure. On the field, Kakashi waved his short sword to block the shuriken, rushed all the way to Garashi and pushed the thunder ball in his hand. Then, under his incredulous gaze, a fist pierced through the lightning and sent him flying. Cough. Kakashi coughed violently and got up awkwardly. Under normal circumstances, the opponent's injury should be more serious than his. But Kakashi didn't rejoice because of this. This was because the discussions around him had already reached his ears. A newcomer is a newcomer, even the initial fear of Garashi has forgotten? Exchanging injuries with Shushi? What kind of idiot is that? Don't say that. After all, Garashi rarely exchanging injuries with others. It's normal that newcomers don't know. Kakashi's heart continued to sink. Sure enough, the next moment, he saw Shushi walking out almost unscathed. Still not going to use all your strength? Garashi asked with a smile. Now I don't seem to have any other choice. Kakashi took a deep breath and began to print. Multiple shadow clone jutsu is a complete copy of his current state. That is to say, the worse his state, the worse the clone's ability to resist attacks will be. So, even if this jutsu is very risky, he can only gamble. If he drags on, he won't even be qualified to gamble. Boom. After a burst of smoke, suddenly there were 60 or 70 Kakashi's figures around him. If the amount of chakra is enough, the multiple shadow clone jutsu can even create thousands of clones. But even so, a lineup of 60 to 70 people is already shocking enough in the eyes of the student ninjas. Senpai, this is my final attack. 60 to 70 Kakashi said in unison, their voices shaking the forest. Very energetic. Garashi's hands began to form seals. His hand speed was so fast that it was dazzling. Looks like I have to get serious too. Illusion, Fox's mind. However, Kakashi, who were like fierce tigers rushing down the mountain, did not have the slightest bit of disorder in their footsteps. Unfortunately, illusions don't work on doppelgangers. No, this is enough. Garashi smiled and actually took the initiative to run into the crowd. Seeing Garashi rushing in his direction without the slightest concealment, Kakashi's main body suddenly woke up. No, the previous genjutsu was to test the location of my main body. Thinking of this, Kakashi's main body no longer cared about hiding, and quickly turned the other doppelgangers around to protect himself. After all, now he only has 170% of his original chakra, and it is impossible for him to fight head-on with Garashi. The formation is completely messed up. Garashi's footsteps didn't stop, crushing all the way. With Kakashi's current ability, controlling a few doppelgangers for a short time is already the limit of the burden on his mind. Any more and he can only make them follow the most basic intelligence. And this kind of rigid attack naturally won't cause much trouble for Garashi. So in the eyes of others, the scene was just Garashi punching Kakashi. These doppelgangers can swarm up, but they can only be used as a meat shield. Kakashi also realized the crisis, gritted his teeth, and simply let all the doppelgangers surround him, completely covering his body. Blocking my sight, do you want me to see something? Garashi thought about it and quickly understood Kakashi's plan. Oh, don't tell me you want to copy my actions again? Even without the Sharingan, you can't change the heart of duplication? Thinking of this, Garashi rushed up more ferociously. This is also good. If I want him to calm down and listen to me, I have to crush his last pride. A-class ninjutsu. You are not the only one who can use it. Under Garashi's violent bombardment, Kakashi's doppelgangers disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Until the last one. However, at the moment when Garashi clenched his fist and punched, the short sword in Kakashi's hand suddenly turned into a human shape, and he grabbed the kunai to meet it. Kachaboom. The kunai was fragmented, blood splashed from the palm, and Kakashi was also heavily blasted out. In just a few seconds, the changes made the surrounding people dizzy, and they felt a kind of excitement in their hearts. Is it over? Who won? In their expectant eyes, the dust dispersed. Kakashi struggled to get up and his right arm was strangely twisted. Although Garashi stood calmly, bright red drops of blood couldn't stop dripping from the fingertips of his right hand. It seemed that both sides were injured, but everyone knew that Kakashi's injury should be more serious than Garashi's. You're a fast learner. Garashi smiled slightly as if he didn't care about his injury at all. Although I don't know why Senpai didn't dodge, but now we can't make hand seals. That is to say, the next confrontation is between taijutsu and kenjutsu. Kakashi raised his short sword, and then rushed up with great excitement. I will prove, boom. But in the next moment, Kakashi flew back at a speed faster than before. Even the dagger was sent flying far away. Kakashi struggled to get up again, and then looking at the spinning chakra ball in Garashi's left hand, his eyes were full of disbelief. How is it possible? Is it a one-handed hand seal? And why haven't I seen this jutsu before? Garashi smiled and dispersed the chakra ball in his hand. You haven't seen it before. After all, this is a ninjutsu that I recently successfully developed, and the difficulty of practicing it should be at the same level as your shadow clone jutsu. Hearing Shushi's words, there was a dead silence in the surroundings, but soon, there was an explosion. What? Garashi can also use A-class ninjutsu? Although Kakashi learned it earlier, but this is a ninjutsu developed by Garashi himself. And it's a ninjutsu without seal. It's too exaggerated. When we were still troubled by the three clones jutsu, Garashi should be able to develop A-class ninjutsu by himself. Everyone was so excited that they couldn't control themselves. They felt that they had witnessed the birth of a miracle. Kakashi's talent was amazing enough, but compared to Garashi, it seemed to be overshadowed. Just like the stars in the sky, only when the sun sets can they show their brilliance. Kakashi's eyes also dimmed since last night. He crazily wanted to prove himself, but he still failed. He is not the senpai's opponent at all, and what made it even more difficult for him to accept is that his last bit of pride was shattered. Thinking of this, Kakashi, who was barely supporting himself, weakly lay down, looking at the afterglow of the setting sun and muttered to himself. Sure enough, the son of a waste is also a waste. Chapter 70. Uchiha clan in a big house. A middle-aged ninja in his 30s and a young ninja in his 20s were sitting on their knees, and the atmosphere was a bit quiet. I can't imagine that Tsukumo-sama would choose to end his life in this way. Well, if he could become Naruto with his character, he might be able to change the current situation of our clan. Yagadame-sama, do you think that Tsukumo-sama's death might have something to do with us? Patriarch, you think too much. Although our clan is feared, it's not to this extent. Yes, I think too much. Fugaku nodded and sighed. It's a pity that I'm still too young and my prestige can't convince the masses. This kind of thing can't be rushed, you can only subtly change people's minds. Uchiha Hakadame-sama looked dignified. Compared to the clan, I think Patriarch should pay more attention to the changes in the outside world. I'll trouble you to pay more attention to the clan's tendency. Fugaku nodded and hesitated. As for the outside world, should we bet on Yandame-sama Naruto in advance? Although Orochimaru's attitude towards us has always been ambiguous, but showing goodwill in advance should. Uchiha Hakadame-sama sighed, but he found that the man in front of him was frowning. Patriarch, what's wrong? Fugaku pondered for a moment. I'm sorry, senpai, compared to Orochimaru-sama, I'm more optimistic about Minato. Minato? Hakadame-sama was lost in thought, and it took him a while to remember. Jiraiya's disciple? Fugaku nodded heavily. Although I don't recognize the will of fire, but if I have to say, it can only be him. Hakadame-sama was shocked. You're so optimistic about him, but he's still too young, and his strength and prestige can't be compared to Orochimaru. Fugaku smiled. In terms of strength and prestige, Tsukumo-sama should be above Orochimaru-sama, but what's the result? Naruto-sama wants to choose someone who can truly inherit his. No, it should be the first Sama's will. After a moment of silence, the 8th generation slowly nodded. Perhaps you are right. Moreover, sending charcoal in the snow is better than adding flowers to a brocade. It's just, how do you plan to get in touch with him? Fugaku's face was gloomy. If his analysis is not wrong, it means that Sandaime may really attach great importance to Minato. Under such circumstances, rashly approaching would only backfire. At this moment, a commotion broke out in the courtyard. Amazing, amazing. Yes, Senior is really a monster. Hearing one of the familiar voices, an awkward expression appeared on the 8th generation patriarch's face. I've made a fool of myself. Fugaku chuckled. Children should be more lively. At this time, the two excited people finally saw the situation clearly and hurriedly saluted. Father, uncle, chief. Seeing that there were other children around, the 8th generation didn't want to be rude. Shunyan, what are you guys discussing? Hearing this, Shunyan also became excited. It's a battle between our school and it's an A-class ninjutsu duel. At first, when he heard that it was a battle in the school, the 8th generation was very calm, but when he heard about A-class ninjutsu, he was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out. Even among jonins, A-class ninjutsu is an absolute trump card. When did such a level of ninjutsu appear in the school? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but ask, is there a new jonin in the school? Shunyan and Bordered Soil shook their heads. No, it's a battle between the first and second years. The 8th generation's mouth twitched, and when he was about to curse, Fugaku stopped him. One of them is Hatake Kakashi, right? Hatake. The 8th generation was surprised. White Fang-sama's son. Fugaku nodded. No wonder. The 8th generation's eyes were complicated. Almost all of them grew up in the shadow of White Fang. What about the other one? It's Garashi. Garashi? The 8th generation's eyes lit up. The kid who put you back on the right track. Shunyan said without any embarrassment. That's him. Last year I was able to fight with Garashi, but now I can't last more than 5 seconds. The 8th generation and Fugaku were surprised. Shunyan was a genius who opened his eyes at the age of 8, but he looked down on himself. Bordered Soil nodded in agreement. After all, Senpai is a genius who developed an A-class ninjutsu at the age of 6. Puff. This time both Fugaku and Shunyan were speechless. Being able to master an A-class ninjutsu at this age is already exaggerated enough. As for developing an A-class ninjutsu, is this something a human can do? Seeing the two so excited, Bordered Soil quickly explained. In fact, Senpai said that he only provided the inspiration and idea, the rest of the details were completed by Nisan. That's a little more acceptable? The two sighed in unison and then stared at each other. What's the name of this Minato you mentioned? Bordered Soil was shocked. Minato. Fugaku Yagaku looked at each other and smiled. Then he looked at the two of them amiably. How old is Shushi? Does he have a close female classmate? In the future, bring him to our clan to play. We also have a lot of cute girls. Bordered Soil and Shunyan also looked at each other. It's over, the clan leader seems to be broken. Woodleaf Hospital. Kakashi was lying on the hospital bed like a salted fish, staring at the ceiling in silence. At this moment, a sound came from outside the door. Kakashi-san, can I come in? Hearing this voice, Kakashi's eyes flickered. After a moment of silence, he said, Please come in. Garashi walked into the ward, closed the door and sat on the chair next to Kakashi. Senpai, what's the matter? Actually, I've been thinking for a long time about whether to talk to you. Garashi looked solemn. Because, what you said before you fell yesterday. Kakashi's eyes were indifferent. Do you want to talk to me about that trash? It's uncomfortable to say something that goes against your heart, isn't it? I don't. If you really think so, you wouldn't have challenged me with Tsukumo-senpai's sword. Garashi stared at Kakashi's eyes. I just want to prove that I'm not the same as that trash. As if he didn't dare to look directly at Garashi's eyes, Kakashi awkwardly turned his head away. At this moment, a barrier opened. Kakashi looked back in surprise only to see Garashi said with a smile, "What I'm going to say next is just some of my personal conjectures. It's not good if it's misunderstood by others, so let's set up a sound ceiling formation." Kakashi wasn't surprised that Garashi could use such a simple barrier, but his heart was also aroused by curiosity, and a little bit of hope that even he didn't know what he was looking for. Garashi looked serious. First of all, do you think Tsukumo-senpai is strong? Kakashi was silent for a moment. Everyone I've met is amazed by his strength. Yes, he's a powerful ninja that even my sensei admires. Garashi sighed softly and changed the topic. So, do you think such a powerful ninja doesn't have a tenacious will? Kakashi's eyes flashed brilliantly, but he still said, "Isn't he the best example?" Garashi shook his head gently. Then I'll ask from another angle. I heard that Tsukumo-senpai hasn't been in a good state for the past few months? Kakashi complained, it's all his fault for being a busybody and saving those irrelevant people. Will the result change? Maybe the public opinion will say that Tsukumo-senpai is too cold-blooded? Kakashi was startled and stammered. How is that possible? The person who completes the mission is a hero. Who knows, it's just a guess. Garashi smiled and changed the topic. However, when Tsukumo-senpai made this decision, maybe he was thinking that he didn't want you to have a cold-blooded father. Kakashi's eyes were confused. Garashi continued. In fact, it's a little strange. Tsukumo-senpai is not in good health. Why does he frequently go on missions? It's not a wartime state where missions are urgent. Kakashi's palm suddenly clenched the bedsheet. You mean someone wants to target him? Garashi shook his head. I don't know, it's just my guess. After all, if there is a misunderstanding, it must be very uncomfortable to be misunderstood by your own son. Kakashi shook his head frantically as if he didn't want to believe this answer. Impossible, he's so strong, who can target him? Garashi sighed softly. What if it's because of you? Kakashi was stunned. Could it be that he's afraid that I'll be targeted? So, all of this is just my guess. Maybe Tsukumo-senpai is really a coward? Garashi smiled and stood up. Shouldn't you be the one to uncover the truth? Kakashi breathed heavily. You're right, I have to pull myself together. Whether he's a hero or a coward, at least these things should be investigated by me. Shushi turned around and walked outside. His right hand, which was wrapped in bandages, was soaked with blood because he had forcibly formed a hand seal. Tears welled up in Kakashi's eyes and he was moved. Senpai, thank you. Garashi waved his hand without looking back and sighed softly. It's always difficult for gentle and correct people to survive, because this world is neither gentle nor correct. Neither gentle nor correct. Kakashi muttered to himself, looking at Garashi's back with a burning flame in his eyes. If it's you, Senpai, you can definitely create a correct world. Chapter 71. Time always passes by unconsciously, and in the blink of an eye, for years have passed. Ninja School. First place, Shimizu Garashi, full score in the three-body technique, full score in the throwing technique, full score in the anti-tracking technique, full score in the extension and expansion of the will of fire. Although it was the most exaggerated result since the establishment of the ninja school, no one present was surprised. In their view, it would be strange if Garashi didn't get full score in any subject. However, Asuma next to Garashi was very nervous. I'm second. However, when the teacher in front of the crowd reported the results, Asuma wailed on the spot, ouch! How can it be Kurenai? At this moment, the originally happy Red was dissatisfied. Asuma, what's the meaning of this? Are you looking down on me? I didn't. Ouch, why is the third place Mute? This time Mute, who was depressed because of losing to Kurenai, began to grind her teeth. Bastard, am I that bad? Asuma turned his head away with a look of dissatisfaction. This is too unfair. Obviously we all got full score, but because your cultural results are better than mine, You are ranked ahead of me. At this time Ibixi's contemptuous voice sounded in his ear. You are not qualified to say this. Most of the books about the will of fire were written by Naruto-sama. Hearing this, Asuma's body trembled. It's over. I didn't pass the extension of the will of fire that the old man is most proud of. I will definitely be beaten to death when I go back. Do you think it's too late for me to repeat a year? Ibixi's mouth twitched. Is your brain eaten by a parasite? Although it's difficult to get full score like Garashi, it's impossible to fail. Asuma looked at him with contempt. I just think that the things in the book are too fake. It's simply an insult to my IQ. Cough cough. Right, you also think that those things are so disgusting that you want to cough, right? So it's not that I don't know, I just don't want to violate my own ninja path. At this moment, a large, warm hand was placed on Asuma's shoulder. So you have ninja Dao. Then when we go back tonight, show me your ninja Dao. Asuma's body trembled. He turned around stiffly and happened to meet a pair of amiable eyes. However, Sandaime didn't listen to him. He walked through the crowd and went straight to the podium. Today I will give everyone a graduation speech. Asuma stood below the stage as if his soul had been hollowed out. He said weakly, do you think I still have a chance? Ibixi patted him on the shoulder and said in a mournful tone, today is the day you carry out your own ninja path. Rest in peace. On the stage, third Naruto was still as kind as ever. Children, I'm very happy to see you standing here. From today onwards you will have a new name, Woodleaf Genin. Hearing this, the crowd burst into excited cheers. For many of them, becoming an official ninja is something they have been looking forward to for a long time. Sandaime raised his hands and pressed down. This means growth, but it also means responsibility. The outside world is not as gentle as the village. Competition, deceit, betrayal, and killing are everywhere. Maybe some of you will never be able to come back because of a mission. Hearing Sandaime's words, everyone calmed down from the excitement of graduation. At this time, Sandaime's voice suddenly became passionate, but because of this, we should protect the hard-won peace of the village. In this village there are your family, friends, and people you are willing to fight for. Are you willing to let these precious things be destroyed by the enemy? The audience was silent for a moment, and then suddenly burst out into loud shouts. No. Absolutely not. Sandaime looked at this scene with gratification and said with a smile, where the leaves dance, the fire will continue to grow. The fire will continue to illuminate the village and let the new leaves sprout. We used to protect you, but from now on, it will be your turn to protect us old men. It has to be said that Sandaime's voice was very infectious. After the speech, the rookies in the audience were moved to tears, and they couldn't wait to sacrifice themselves for Woodleaf. Next, it was time to issue the Woodleaf forehead protector to each graduating ninja. Woodleaf Genin? It doesn't feel bad. Garashi smiled and put the forehead protector on his head. Asuma looked at the forehead protector and muttered, you say if I cut this forehead protector, will the old man forget today's matter and beg me not to be a traitor? As soon as his voice fell, everyone around him seemed to be afraid of being infected by his idiocy and stood away from him. Seeing everyone's reaction, Asuma had to accept his fate. Okay, I understand. At this time, the 8 gods on the stage looked at the roster in his hand and hesitated. As for the division of classes, the division of classes will be announced on the notice outside the school this evening. Now you are dismissed. Everyone didn't think much and scattered with cheers. After a while in Naruto's office. Naruto-sama, isn't this division of classes not in line with the rules? 8 gods pointed at the roster and was somewhat puzzled. Garashi, Kurenai, and Asuma, they are the strongest in the class, isn't this a way to balance their strength? Sandaime knocked the opium pipe on the table and said calmly, the gap in strength between them and the others is too big. If they team up with others, the tasks they take will be too easy and they won't be able to train. If the tasks they take are too difficult, the others will be in danger. 8 gods suddenly nodded and said with emotion, yes, their strength is even beyond the ordinary Chunin, especially Garashi. I suspect that he is close to the strength of a Jonin. Sandaime smiled and didn't say anything. After a while, his face became dignified again. In addition, I have other considerations for the 3 of them to team up. 8 gods was puzzled. What other reasons are there? Maybe you haven't felt it in the village, but the clouds of war are beginning to cover the land of Shinobi again. 8 gods was surprised. What? Is there going to be a war again? In fact, the small frictions between the villages have never stopped, but Naruto-sama said it so solemnly, 8 gods naturally didn't think it was a small frictions. I don't know yet, this is just my guess from the changes in the entrusted tasks. Possible, I hope this guess is wrong. 8 gods tried to calm down, but what does this have to do with the division of classes? Sandame's face was firm. All 3 of them are geniuses. If they can grow up as soon as possible, they may play a certain role in the war. 8 gods was surprised. Asma is your? Sandame shook his head. It is because he is my son that he should go to the battlefield. 8 gods didn't try to persuade Sandame anymore, but his eyes were full of admiration. Naruto, Sama, who is the jonin you arranged for them? Yamanaka Inoichi. Chapter 72. In Shinakushina's house, which has gradually developed into a small base for Garashi. Cheers? Forward leaf. Amidst the excited clinking of glasses and cheering, the sweet juice splashed out. Before today they were still people of the same world, but after today they will run into a different future. So the only thing they can do is to cheer and vent. On this side, Asma and Ibixi hugged each other. Ah, Ibixi, let me tell you, if you don't have such a foul mouth, you are very cute. Oh, actually, I also admire you. I have a foul mouth consciously, but you can also have a foul mouth unconsciously. When did I have a foul mouth? Is it wrong to tell the truth? It's not wrong to tell the truth, but the way you speak is really asking for a beating. On the other side, Shizune and Kurenai were discussing in a low voice. Kurenai, I may leave with Leaf with Tsunade-sama today. Although I knew this day would come, it's still too sudden. When I'm not here, you must take care of Garashi. Well, I will do this kind of thing even if you don't tell me. In the middle, Mizuki and Garashi were talking. Mizuki, I heard that Orochimaru-sama accepted you as a disciple? Well, he wants me to practice senjutsu. But isn't your chakra still lacking a lot? He said that he will find a way to solve it. Is it because of the curse? No, Yugo shouldn't be born yet. Then is it because of the first-generation cell research? Garashi's mind turned and he warned with a serious expression. Although this may not be appropriate for me to say, Sensei did say that Orochimaru-sama has changed so much that even she can't recognize him. In short, you must be careful. The village said that Orochimaru is the most likely person to become the 4th-generation head Naruto, but Garashi not only didn't care about his identity, but also took the initiative to remind me to be careful of Orochimaru. A warm current gushed out from Shueimu's heart. Sure enough, in this world only Garashi truly cared about him. However, risks are often accompanied by benefits. For a mediocre ninja like me, just looking at Garashi's back is already very difficult. If I want to become his most useful tool, I can only do this. Of course, Shueimu knew why Orochimaru would take a fancy to an ordinary person like him, but in order not to let Garashi worry, he pretended to be relaxed and said, "It will be fine. Why would Orochimaru harm an ordinary person like me?" Ah, I must be thinking too much. Then, let's celebrate you becoming the disciple of Orochimaru. Yes, I will definitely. At this moment, a ninja wearing goggles rushed in. That's amazing. You'll never guess who I'm in the same class as. Oh, it's Bordered Soil. You guys graduated too? For Sir Bordered Soil, graduating a year early is nothing. Don't interrupt, you haven't guessed yet. Look at your excited look, you must be in the same class as Rin, right? Although I am indeed in the same class as Rin, but that's not what I want to talk about. Seeing the playful smile on everyone's face, Bordered Soil guiltily changed the topic. It's Kakashi. Hearing that it's Kakashi, many people were puzzled. Didn't Kakashi graduate several years ago? Moreover, I heard that he became a chunin the 2nd year after graduation. Bordered Soil scratched his head. It seems that the team he was in before, except for him, everyone else died in a mission. Because he didn't have time to be assigned to a new team, he simply decided to be in the same class as us. Garashi raised his eyebrows. Should I say that he's worthy of being a real protagonist? This heavenly cursed Lone Star ring was too dangerous. Bordered Soil continued. Also, the jonin that the village arranged for us to guide us is Minato-san. I was worried that it would be one of those old-fashioned people. It turned out to be Minato-san. Asma said and couldn't help but tease. Bordered Soil, how bad is your strength that you arranged such a powerful teacher to balance the strength of your team? Bordered Soil's face darkened and said with a stare, You still have the nerve to talk about me, aren't you the last in the senior team? I what? Asma said and finally woke up. Wait, how do you know our class situation? Bordered Soil waved his hand indifferently. The class situation is out, and it's posted on the notice outside the school. Hearing this, Everyone in the living room couldn't help but be curious, and one by one they rushed out shouting. Only bordered soil was left in the room, dumbfounded. I haven't even started to celebrate yet. At night, Garashi looked helplessly at the three people in front of him. Sensei, you don't have to leave in such a hurry, right? Jiraiya laughed at the side. If we leave during the day, there will be too many people who can't bear to part with us, and it'll be ugly with so many people crying. Tsunade looked at him with disdain. Can't bear to part with the toilet paper you give us every month? Jiraiya retorted, how is my book toilet paper? At least it's an excellent toilet reading material. Tsunade chuckled and ignored him. She turned to look at Shushi. With your current ability, I don't have much to teach you. How can that be? I still have a lot of things to ask Sensei. You only lack experience, and time will be your best teacher. Tsunade said, and her face suddenly became serious. And the last lesson I'm going to teach you is to allow you to officially practice senjutsu. With your current amount of chakra, you should be able to resist the erosion of natural energy. Garashi said seriously, I understand. I don't know senjutsu and there's nothing I can teach you. But you've already signed a contract with the Shikatsu forest, you can ask Sensei Katsuyu when the time comes. Jiraiya warned from the side, although senjutsu is powerful, don't rely too much on it because before you enter Sage mode, there will be a period of time when you leave the battle to refine senjutsu chakra. And this process is stationary, so it's very dangerous. Shushi nodded. Unless his chakra is as abundant as Naruto's, and he can use Shadow Clone Jutsu to help him refine senjutsu chakra, or he can enter Sage mode instantly like Hashirama. Otherwise, this ability is destined to be used as a trump card. Seeing that the few of them had finally finished talking, Silent Sound walked up. Garashi, this is my uncle's experience of practicing spirit transformation jutsu. You just exchanged for the spirit transformation jutsu today, this experience may be useful to you. Garashi took the book, smiled, took out a kunai, and handed it to Shizune. In the case where the perception range is too far, I can't use Flying Thunder God to directly teleport, but it's still possible to send some letters, although it's only one-sided. Jiraiya looked at this scene, stunned. Naruto-sama used the ninjutsu that shocked the shinobi world to pick up girls. I learned it. Shizune took the kunai carefully, and then suddenly stepped forward and lightly pecked Garashi's face, chuckled, and ran away. Garashi, you will definitely become the greatest ninja in Woodleaf. Chapter 73. The next day, early morning. In an empty classroom, Garashi and the other two had already arrived in advance. Oh, Sensei is so slow. After waiting for a while, Asuma yawned impatiently, looked to the side and asked, Garashi, I heard that Tsunade-sama and the others left Woodleaf? Garashi flipped through the experience of spiritualization jutsu and replied without raising his head, they left last night. Asuma sighed sadly, growth is really accompanied by troubles. In the blink of an eye, so many familiar faces are gone. Kurenai glanced at him, don't say it like we won't see each other in the future, bastard. Asuma shrugged indifferently and asked, have you heard that our instructor seems to be a Yamanaka Jonin? Kurenai nodded, I heard, and then? Asuma smiled, the Yamanaka Jonin's frontal combat ability doesn't seem to be strong. Do you think the village thinks that the three of us are too powerful, so they deliberately arranged a weak Jonin to balance? What are you? Kurenai turned her head and laughed unladylike. Haha, what are you doing? Asuma had 2 pens inserted in his nostrils, and he made a victory sign with a happy face. Release. With a light shout, the classroom door was pushed open, and a young ninja who looked to be in his 20s walked in. Never underestimate any ninja, this is the first lesson I teach you. By the way, Asuma-san, it's very rude to speak ill of others behind their backs. Garashi and Kurenai hurriedly greeted him. Yamanaka-sensei. Asuma, who was saved, rubbed his nose and looked resentful. I know. The young ninja smiled helplessly and walked to the podium. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Yamanaka Inoichi. My interest is planting flowers and grass. My dream is probably to have a child in the future and train him to be an excellent ninja. Asuma muttered softly, why do I feel like the old man is more energetic than him? Naruto-sama is old but not old at heart. Otherwise, how can you be born at the age of 42? Yamanaka Inoichi glanced at him. Of course, he only dared to think this in his heart. As for my ability, my technique is a secret spiritual technique used to control the enemy's body. Yamanaka Inoichi smiled. In a sense, Asuma is not wrong. My existence is to make up for your shortcomings in intelligence and perception. Asuma glared at her. Then why did you play with my body? Yamanaka Inoichi's mouth twitched. What is this? Asuma-sen, has no one ever told you that a straightforward truth is annoying? Although Yamanaka Inoichi said that he was useless, Garashi didn't take it seriously. Any jonin is an elite who grew up on the edge of life and death. They are at the top of ordinary ninja. Even if he's just an intelligence ninja, his strength is absolutely not to be underestimated. Asuma muttered in a low voice, that guy Ibiki seems to have said the same thing. Do all ninjas who do intelligence like to play this game? I finished the introduction. As for the three of you, Yamanaka Inoichi smiled. I've already heard about you, so there's no need to introduce you. How can this be? I even prepared a speech to shock everyone when I went back last night. Asuma, who was eager to introduce himself, was stunned, but he soon cheered up again. What about strength? You have to understand our strength to better cooperate, right? Indeed, interests and hobbies can be understood from intelligence, but real strength can only be observed through actual combat. Yamanaka Inoichi didn't refute this time. So, you three will show me an actual combat exercise. Asuma, who was rubbing his hands, was stunned. Wait, isn't it the three of us who will fight with you, sensei? Yamanaka Inoichi calmly waved his hand. I'm a jonin. How can I bully you newcomers? Asuma was still a little suspicious. Really? But I heard that other instructors jonin will fight on their own. Yamanaka Inoichi's face remained unchanged. I'm different from them. As an intelligence ninja, I can analyze your approximate strength as long as I watch from the side. In addition, another reason for those jonins to fight is to let newcomers see the gap in strength, but you are all geniuses. I don't think it's necessary to take this step. Asuma nodded in agreement. That's true. Kurenai couldn't help but give him a blank look. Where did you get this confidence from? Is it because you lost too much that you built some strange confidence? Seeing that Asuma finally didn't entangle more on this matter, Yamanaka Inoichi was secretly relieved. If he didn't know the strength of the three of them in advance, maybe he would have really overturned today. After all, what he was best at was his family's secret spiritual technique, and there were two genjutsu ninjas with strong spiritual resistance. What's more, he really couldn't see through Garashi's strength. However, Hatake Kakashi became a chunin at the age of 6, and now I heard that he has the strength close to jonin, and his talent is stronger than Kakashi. Even if he lacks pressure and tempering, his strength is estimated to not be weaker than Kakashi. Thinking of this, his belief in not fighting became stronger. If he was defeated by his own student on the first day, would he still have dignity as a teacher? Let's go to the test now. They came to the grove behind the school. Asuma and Kurenai are in a group, and Garashi is in a group alone. Do you have any objections? Yamanaka Inoichi divided them according to his understanding of the situation. I have an objection. Asuma raised his hand. Asuma-san wants to fight with Garashi alone? Yamanaka Inoichi nodded with relief. As expected of Naruto-sama's. Asuma calmly interrupted, I'm fine with it, but if Yamanaka-sensei really wants to know our true strength, it's definitely not possible. This time it was Yamanaka Inoichi's turn to be confused. Why do you say that? Kurenai next to him said with a bitter face, because it's over too fast. Asuma added, it's the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. If Garashi doesn't use the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, we can still fight normally, but once he uses the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, the battle is over quickly. Flying Thunder God Jutsu? Yamanaka Inoichi's eyes widened. Although the document recorded Garashi's experience of exchanging the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, he didn't think about it at all. After all, this is the most difficult spacetime ninjutsu among the S-class ninjutsu. In his view, it's lucky enough to have Namikaze Minato succeed in this era. Actually, I also recently succeeded under the guidance of Minato-san. Garashi said modestly. But aren't you a medical ninja? Yamanaka Inoichi still found it difficult to accept. Without waiting for Garashi to speak, Asuma skillfully comforted, in order to appear in front of every injured person in time, it's reasonable for Garashi as a medical ninja to know some space-time ninjutsu. Chapter 74. Yamanaka Inoichi's three views were shocked, and he looked to the side and asked, is this reasonable? Kurenai nodded vigorously, this is very reasonable. Is it because I'm too strange? Yamanaka Inoichi tried to calm down his inner shock and barely squeezed out a smile. Then how do you think we should test it? Asuma didn't care. In fact, I'm used to losing, but if you don't want to witness a battle that ends in 3 seconds, then you can only let Garashi restrict the use of Flying Thunder God Jutsu. Even if I'm an intelligence ninja, it's impossible to analyze any useful information in 3 seconds. Yamanaka Inoichi sighed and then looked to the side. Garashi, I have to wrong you. Garashi didn't care and smiled. In fact, it's not bad. Relying too much on one ninjutsu will only leave flaws for yourself. Even if you master such a terrible ninjutsu like Flying Thunder God Jutsu, you don't have the slightest idea of carelessness? Yamanaka Inoichi nodded secretly. Compared with talent, he was actually more optimistic about the other party's temperament. Geniuses are very powerful, but only the geniuses who live to the end can be remembered by everyone. Geniuses who die in the middle are nothing. On the field, Asuma had taken the lead in launching an attack. Katana. Ash Concealment Jutsu. In an instant, the forest was shrouded in a thick smoke. The temperature is rising? Garashi didn't dare to neglect. While opening the perception barrier, he stepped on the tree and ran upward, trying to get out of the smoke. Seemingly aware of Garashi's movements, Asuma no longer hesitated. When released Great Gale. The smoke, which was originally in the state of embers, burst into flames under the blow of the wind. It's really troublesome to deal with this kind of attack without 5 elements release. It seems that it's time to put the practice of 5 elements release on the agenda. Garashi easily escaped the pursuit of the Sea of Fire and even had time to think about the future. Sure enough, Garashi's perception is too sharp. Asuma sighed and no longer hid, fully controlling the Sea of Fire. While Asuma was controlling the Sea of Fire, he had also exposed his position. Is it there? Garashi's eyes narrowed and he completed the seal almost instantly. Illusion, magical soundwave. The ferocious Sea of Fire suddenly calmed down, but in the next moment, a huge fire snake bit towards Garashi's location. It's Red's illusion. Garashi understood. Although Red's attainment in illusion was not as good as his, it was still easy for her to disrupt Asuma's chakra flow and awaken his teammates. At the same time, Red, who had been hiding from the beginning, made another seal. Illusion, dark sneak technique. Red also knew that her level of illusion was far inferior to Garashi's, so from the beginning she had never thought of resisting head-on. She left the task of attacking to Asuma, and she only needed to be the support and awaken. Yamanaka Inoichi stood on the branch of a big tree, watching the battle condescendingly. Seeing the endless high-level ninjutsu, his heart twitched. Are these little guys really genin? If I don't count their family's secret ninjutsu, I feel that they have mastered more high-level ninjutsu than I do. Although it was dark in front of him, Garashi did not panic. The heat wave coming towards him allowed him to clearly determine the direction of the attack. After easily avoiding the fire snake's bite, Garashi bit his finger and summoned the blood contract. Summoning technique. In the next moment, a huge slug with a body length of 10 meters appeared in the forest. Garashi-sama. The slug called out politely. Although the slugs of the Shikatsu forest were theoretically part of the slug sage, but just like the shadow clone jutsu, these slugs could also be regarded as independent lifeforms. Otherwise, Garashi would not dare to accept the slug sage's honorific. Slug, I'm now under genjutsu and can't observe the surroundings. I'll have to trouble you to act as my eyes for the time being. Garashi stood on the slug's huge body and said softly. Yes, Garashi-sama. The slug happily replied. After all, Dark Walk is only in genjutsu, it can't really change the sky and the earth. The slug who was not affected by the genjutsu could naturally see Asuma's attack. With the subtle cooperation of the slug, Asuma's continuous attacks all missed. Not only that, Garashi also controlled the slug and quietly moved in a certain direction. Although Dark Walk is an A-class genjutsu with Garashi's strength, there's no reason why he can't break it. Seeing Garashi summon the slug, Asuma was puzzled at first, but after noticing the direction the slug was moving, he finally woke up. Kurenai, hurry up and remove the genjutsu. Garashi deliberately didn't remove the genjutsu, he wants to use chakra to find you. He couldn't help but be nervous. Without Kurenai's help, with his genjutsu resistance, he would be killed by Garashi in an instant. Kurenai, who was hiding in the corner of the forest, was shocked and hurriedly removed the genjutsu. However, it was too late. After recovering his sight, Garashi jumped a few times and appeared in front of Kurenai, who was preparing to escape. Golden Bind Jutsu. Kurenai, who had no time to move, was directly fixed in place. Seeing this, Asuma decisively raised his hand to surrender. Garashi couldn't help but laugh. He unbound Kurenai and then shouted to the top. Yamanaka-sensei, the test is over. Yamanaka Inoichi jumped down from the tree and looked at the tragic scene around him. When his eyes moved to Garashi, his heart twitched and blocked. Fortunately, I didn't play today, otherwise I would have played it out. Being affected by an A-class genjutsu, deliberately not removing the genjutsu, and even relying on the connection of the genjutsu to find the caster, is this really something that a human can do? It was the first time he saw someone spiritual will be strong to this extent. He even suspected that if he used the turning jutsu on Garashi, the result would be no better than Kurenai's. Asuma came up and winked. Yamanaka-sensei, our strength is okay, right? Yamanaka Inoichi suppressed the shock in his heart and looked at him and asked, why are you so proficient? What proficiency? Oh, you mean surrender? Asuma's face was full of bitterness. When you are defeated in the same way 1,000 times, I believe you will have the same awareness as me. If it was before, Yamanaka Inoichi might have despised him, but now, he looked at Asuma with a trace of sympathy and admiration. It must be hard to be an opponent with such a monster. Ahem, in fact, your performance is already very good. Except for the ninjutsu connection that is still relatively immature, the strength of ordinary chunin is not necessarily comparable to you. Just a chunin? Asuma sighed with melancholy and asked with interest, what about Garashi? Yamanaka Inoichi was silent for a moment and hesitated. I don't know, but in the field of genjutsu he should be able to reach the level of special jonin. Chapter 75. Garashi didn't comment on Yamanaka Inoichi's evaluation. If Wood Leaf Jonin is the benchmark of the ninja world, then Tokubetsu Jonin, in fact, it's hard to say what particularly outstanding performance. Therefore, even Asuma disdainfully curled his lips. I don't believe that Tokubetsu Jonin's genjutsu is as powerful as Garashi's. Kurenai also nodded. Yes, I heard that Hatake Kakashi is considered by many people to have the strength of Tokubetsu Jonin. Seeing this, Yamanaka Inoichi said with some madness, Tokubetsu Jonin is also very powerful, okay? Since when can even genin look down on Tokubetsu Jonin? However, when he thought of Garashi's previous performance, he was relieved. Geniuses are different from ordinary people, and monsters and geniuses can't be lumped together. Ahem, let me comment on the previous battle. First of all, Asuma and Kurenai, your performance is indeed worthy of the name of geniuses, but Yamanaka Inoichi warned with a dignified face. Both of you are too focused on the role of high-level ninjutsu. High-level ninjutsu is powerful, but at the same time, it also has the drawbacks of slow printing and chakra consumption. Just like in the battle just now, since there are two of you, you should take advantage of the number of people and the frequency of your attacks. Use ninjutsu that takes less time to make hand seals to force Shushi to be exhausted. Asuma was a little dissatisfied. Yamanaka-sensei, you may not know, but Garashi's medical ninjutsu is super powerful. Ninjutsu with too little power won't work on him at all. That's why I emphasize cooperation. Yamanaka Inoichi said earnestly, then looked to the side and asked, Garashi, the secret of your medical ninjutsu is Inu Wushuang Mie, right? Actually, it's a low-level version of Inu Wushuang Mie. Garashi didn't mind telling the secret at all. Inu Wushuang Mie is to grasp the enemy's attack in advance and cover that part with yang release chakra in advance. It's too dangerous to predict the enemy's attack in the battle, so I simply take the initiative to guide the injured part. Asuma looked at Garashi and suddenly realized, no wonder you always used to attack by yourself. It turns out that you want to control the situation in your own hands. Do you understand? Yamanaka Inoichi looked serious. In fact, you've lost in the control of the situation. If you can predict Garashi's actions, then you can use the simplest jutsu to cause the most effective damage. Asuma pondered for a moment and then said, what if Shushi predicted my prediction? Inoichi's this is, what if Garashi predicted that I predicted his prediction? Yamanaka Inoichi's mouth twitched and he simply ignored him. As for Garashi, you did very well in terms of the use of ninjutsu and timing, but that doesn't mean you have no weaknesses. Garashi said softly, is it an AoE attack? Yamanaka Inoichi was a little surprised. It was easy to see others clearly, but it was difficult to see oneself clearly, especially for those young and famous geniuses. However, this kind of worry didn't seem to happen to Garashi at all. Your main AoE attack is a group illusion, right? But just like in the drill just now, once the enemy has a ninja with strong illusion resistance, it will be difficult for your group attack to have any substantial effect. Garashi nodded approvingly. Because genjutsu can be awakened by chakras, disrupted flow by its companions, it does have a lot of limitations in group combat. In addition, your means to deal with the enemy's attack are also poor. Just like Asuma's fire release before, the general ninja can use earth release to defend, wind release to rebound, and water release to extinguish, but you can only keep dodging. With that, Yamanaka Inoichi added, although this is under the condition of restricting your use of the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, that kind of esoteric ninjutsu consumes a lot of chakra. It can be achieved with ordinary release jutsu, so there's no need to waste your chakra. Garashi also heard Yamanaka Inoichi's meaning. Are you suggesting that I practice 5 elements release? If it's an ordinary person, I wouldn't recommend them to do this kind of energy-wasting thing, but you're different. Even the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, a super difficult space-time ninjutsu, can be successfully practiced with both genjutsu and medical ninjutsu. Speaking of this, Yamanaka Inoichi couldn't help but show a look of envy and amazement. With this talent, even if you practice 5 elements release, it shouldn't take too much time. At least, under the premise that it doesn't involve advanced release. Garashi smiled. In fact, even if Yamanaka-sensei didn't say that, I was going to start practicing 5 elements release. Sure enough, he's worthy of being my favorite person, even his thoughts are the same as mine. Yamanaka Inoichi nodded with appreciation and added, however, remember to practice it without affecting your major ninjutsu. Garashi said with a smile, about this, Yamanaka-sensei, you don't have to worry. Because I have nothing to learn in these 2 aspects. You know it in your heart. Yamanaka Inoichi was stunned and touched his ear doubtfully. What did you just say? Kurenai blinked playfully. Garashi means that he has learned all of Tsunade-sama's medical ninjutsu and my father's genjutsu. Seeing Yamanaka Inoichi's confused expression, Kurenai's heart also found a trace of comfort for her father who was squeezed dry early. In fact, according to her father, Garashi's talent in genjutsu is stronger than medical ninjutsu, and her father's strength and foundation are not as good as Tsunade-sama. Because of this, Shushi's illusion technique had to be explored by himself since 2 years ago. Yamanaka Inoichi's breathing suddenly became rapid. Not a human being, this is not a human being, right? One is the strongest medical ninjutsu in the ninja world, and the other is Woodleaf's #1 genjutsu ninja. Learning all of their jutsu is almost equivalent to hollowing out all of Woodleaf's medical ninjutsu and genjutsu. So, standing in front of me is actually an emotionless learning machine, right? Yamanaka Inoichi struggled to suppress the soul of ridicule in his heart and reluctantly smiled. Ha ha ha, then I don't have to worry. After that, Yamanaka Inoichi's eyes subconsciously moved to Asuma. Asuma, who was a little confused, asked, Yamanaka-sensei, is there a problem? Oh, nothing. After regaining the confidence of a normal genius from someone, Yamanaka Inoichi said, the cultivation of the 5 elements release is inseparable from the change of form and nature. Although you may have already understood it as your instructor, I will explain it routinely. Chapter 76. Form change and nature change, as the name implies, is to change the form and nature of the jutsu so that it can exert more power. In fact, any release contains both form change and nature change, such as the Great Fireball Jutsu. The nature changes the flame, and the form changes the sphere. Garashi secretly pondered. According to his understanding, the nature changes the chemical change, and the form changes the physical change. Yamanaka Inoichi paused and then asked, since it also contains the nature change and the form change, do you know the difference between low-level ninjutsu and high-level ninjutsu? Garashi said softly, is it a characteristic? Yamanaka Inoichi was a little surprised. You know? Garashi nodded slightly. I learned about it in the book. Yes, it's a characteristic. Yamanaka Inoichi nodded. For example, the sharpness, rotation, hardness, penetration of the form change, and the high temperature, paralysis, moisturizing vitality of the nature change. Just like the Fire Dragon Jutsu and the C-Class Ninjutsu, it sounds powerful, but what's the use of turning into a dragon? Looks scary. But the flame-sharp spear in the form of a spear is different. Red, who didn't know much about the 5 elements release, interrupted, Yamanaka-sensei, but isn't the flame without a physical body? Even if it turns into a spear, it can't be like a real spear, right? So, the most important step in the high-level form change is to compress chakra. Asuma explained, you should have seen Garashi's Rasengan, which has a physical effect under high compression. Asuma is right. Yamanaka Inoichi agreed. Just like the Reikage Sandame of Yunnan village, his Raitan armor, in addition to activating the body, the high-density Raitan chakra also has the strongest defense like armor. Seeing red nodding, Yamanaka Inoichi continued, as for the nature change, take fire release as an example, a series of characteristics such as high temperature, burning, bursting, light, etc. High-level escape techniques usually fused several characteristics or continuously deepened one characteristic. For example, the flame of the Grand Fireball technique is only at the temperature of an ordinary flame, but the dust concealment technique that Asma used in the previous battle can reach an extremely high temperature in an instant. Of course, not all situations are like this. There are also combinations of ninja tools and release techniques. The combination of release techniques and release techniques can also achieve the effect of high-level ninjutsu. Yamanaka Inoichi asked again, "By the way, Garashi, have you tested your chakra attributes?" Garashi nodded. "My attributes are earth, water, and wind." 3 attributes? It's not bad at all. Yamanaka Inoichi said with a smile, "With your talent, maybe you can use combination ninjutsu like Naruto-sama in the future." Speaking of combined ninjutsu, Garashi skillfully asked, "I heard from Tsunade-sensei that when 2 types of chakra are combined at the same time, a new ninjutsu will be created." Tsunade-sama? Yamanaka Inoichi was slightly lost and immediately smiled. "Tsunade-sama may want to talk to you about Mokutan. After all, Tsunade-sama's grandfather was the first dame who used Mokutan to pacify the warring states." Listening to Yamanaka Inoichi mentioning the most legendary first dame, Asma and Kurenai were also faintly excited. How is Mokutan integrated? Can we learn it too? Seeing their excitement, Yamanaka Inoichi couldn't help but laugh. Mokutan is the product of the combination of water chakra and earth chakra. Among you, only Garashi meets the conditions. However, don't think too much about it. Developing a Kekkai Genkai boundary is not something that can be successfully developed as long as there is a corresponding attribute of chakra. Otherwise, Naruto-sama would have developed more than one Kekkai Genkai boundary. Kurenai asked curiously, "Has anyone developed it successfully?" Yamanaka Inoichi pondered for a moment. In recent decades, it seems that no new Kekkai Genkai boundary has been born, but looking back, there is a Kekkai Genkai elimination. Kurenai tilted her head and asked, "Kekkai Genkai elimination, what is that?" Yamanaka Inoichi looked dignified. "That is the fusion of 3 attributes of chakra. Its power is completely above the Kekkai Genkai boundary. The dust release of the 3rd Tsuchikage is the Kekkai Genkai elimination. The 3rd Tsuchikage even developed a 3-attribute Kekkai Genkai elimination." Asma was shocked at first and then immediately disdained. "Old man, the Sandame Naruto is too bad. He can't even develop a 2-attribute Kekkai Genkai boundary. That Kekkai Genkai elimination was actually developed by the 2nd Tsuchikage. The 3rd Tsuchikage just inherited it from him." Yamanaka Inoichi hurriedly explained, almost breaking out in cold sweat. Even if Naruto-sama is broad-minded, this kind of thing is hard to ignore. Worried that Asma would say something shocking, he quickly changed the topic. "Ahem, let's continue to talk about Mokutan. Do you know what's so powerful about Mokutan?" "Well, I don't know. Mokutan doesn't have the softness of water release, nor the thickness of earth release, but it has a powerful characteristic that no other release can compare to: absorption." Kurenai asked puzzledly. "Absorption? It's absorbing chakra." Kurenai and Asma were shocked. "It can even absorb chakra. Isn't this release too powerful? Just think about it and you can understand how terrible it is to be able to absorb the opponent's chakra in battle." Yamanaka Inoichi smiled. "Although Mokutan is powerful, the real power is Shodame-sama. If it's someone else, even if they have Mokutan, they may not be able to absorb the enemy." Chapter 77. Shikatsu Forest. On a huge green leaf, Garashi was sitting cross-legged. Breathe, 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 breathe. In self-hypnosis, Garashi seemed to have forgotten all the troubles around him. Almost every breath he took was in harmony with the wind, as if he was perfectly integrated with nature. The next moment, eyeshadow lines began to appear at the corner of his eyes. Wow. Garashi-sama is really amazing. The first time he practiced, he entered sage mode. In these soft and cute cheers, Garashi slowly opened his eyes. The first stage of sage mode is not difficult for me, but if I want to use sage mode in a normal battle, I have to at least reach the second stage of Sage Mode. Shushi muttered to himself. The second stage was actually a division based on his own understanding of it. The first stage is to refine in a static state for a period of time, then enter Sage Mode. The second stage is to enter Sage Mode in a moving state. Just like Jiraiya's Sage Mode, although the two Sage Toads were fixed on his shoulders to help him refine chakra, they were not really motionless, they could still release ninjutsu. Based on his own experience, the Sage Mode's stillness was more about inner peace. Immobility and small movements were just easier to achieve this state. As long as he can be calm in battle, it is possible to reach the second stage of Sage Mode. As for the third stage, it is to enter Sage Mode in seconds. Even in his opinion, this stage is too far away. Thinking of this, Garashi dispelled Sage Mode, stood up, and looked at the giant slug in the center and bowed. Slug Sage, thank you for guiding me in my training. The giant slug, which looked like a mountain range, moved its body and said in a gentle voice, Little Shushi, it's your own hard work that allowed you to cultivate the Sage Mode. If there's anything you need help with, please feel free to tell us. In a sense, this was one of the reasons why he chose the Shikatsu forest. Compared to the Great Toad Immortal's prophecy from Mount Mystic Wood and the sinister White Snake Immortal from Dragon Ground Cave, the transcendent and indifferent Immortal Slug should be the least threatening. I understand. Thank you, Immortal Slug. After expressing his gratitude, Garashi began to form seals. Spirit communication technique. The next moment, a small slug appeared in front of Garashi. At the same time in Woodleaf. The big slug that had been summoned by Garashi in advance looked at the position where the little slug had suddenly disappeared and muttered to itself, Is it done already? Then I'm going to start working too. As it spoke, it tried to extend its clumsy antennae and touched them twice symbolically. Reverse spiritual communication technique. As soon as he finished speaking, Garashi returned to Woodleaf. Looking at the familiar surroundings, Garashi smiled and said, Thank you, slug. The big slug happily twisted its antennae. This is what I should do. After releasing the summoning technique and sending the big slug back to the Shikatsu forest, Garashi went to the mission center. In front of the mission center, Asuma leaned on the pillar with his hands on his head. Garashi, you're so slow today. Sorry, I just finished cultivating. Asuma noticed Garashi's raindrops and fresh breath, and couldn't help but twitch his mouth. You're cultivating so early? Garashi smiled, only when I'm cultivating Sage Mode. After all, cultivating in that state of tranquility is almost the same as sleeping. At this time, Yamanaka and Noichi walked out of the mission center. Now you know the gap? Geniuses aren't terrible. What's terrible is that geniuses work harder than you. Asuma calmly shrugged. I knew this when I was 5 years old. Yamanaka and Noichi smiled helplessly. Then it's really hard for you? Kurenai asked excitedly. Yamanaka-sensei, what level of task are we going to take? Garashi also rarely said, I hope it's not a D-level task. Even he didn't think that a task like finding pets to pick up garbage would have any growth. Seeing the three students looking at him, Yamanaka and Noichi couldn't help but smile. Under normal circumstances, genin can receive D-level and C-level tasks. However, it's not so easy for a new team like us to receive C-level tasks without any experience. Yamanaka and Noichi walked into the mission center and said, Among them, the first thing to be excluded is the escort task. Asuma asked, Is it because it takes too long and affects efficiency? In fact, it's because the employer of the escort task attaches the most importance to safety. Even if all of you are geniuses without any mission experience, no employer will agree to let you take on a mission. Yamanaka and Noichi stood in the C-level task area and introduced one by one. This is taming a large beast. Unfortunately, it's taming. If it's hunting, you should be able to receive it. This time it was Kurenai's turn to wonder, what's the difference? Garashi said with a smile, it should be worried that the failure of the task will scare away the target. Therefore, this type of task will have relatively higher requirements than hunting. Yamanaka and Noichi nodded. That's right. When you take a task in the future, you have to be like Masashi. Pay attention to the subtle differences. A real ninja should be able to analyze the necessary information before taking a task. Let's take a C-rank mission for example. The mission reward is usually 30,000 to 100,000 taels of silver. Missions that are time-consuming and dangerous will have a higher reward. Since we don't have a clear competitive advantage, most of the missions that we can receive are relatively low-quality missions. So, the task that's really suitable for us is this. Yamanaka Inoichi's right hand brushed across the task interface and finally stopped on a scroll on the left. Exterminate the mountain bandits. The task reward is 60,000 silver. Looking at the content on the scroll, Asma suddenly became excited. Will there be a chunin in it? Yamanaka Inoichi was a little dumbfounded. Not to mention a chunin, even a genin is unlikely. Asma sighed with disinterest. What? Boring. However, Yamanaka Inoichi's expression was dignified. Ninja is also a human, and he will die if his head is cut off. There used to be a newcomer like you who always thought that ordinary people were nothing to be afraid of. As a result, because of arrogance, he was surrounded by the enemy. He didn't have time to print and was finally dismembered by the ordinary people he looked down on. Although Asma didn't feel that he would be so unbearable, but after the teacher's reminder, he put away the contempt in his heart. Yamanaka-sensei, I understand. Seeing that the three of them were all dignified and ready to go all out, Yamanaka Inoichi had some regret in his heart. Should I not have reminded them? With their strength, it's a massacre if they get serious. If they are careless, it can be regarded as training. Oh, poor mountain bandits, I'm sorry for you. Chapter 78. Within the borders of the country of fire, within a lush forest, a group of 4 people galloped and jumped on the trees. Yamanaka-sensei, isn't this an era of peace? Why are there still so many bandits? Thinking of the long list of commissions he saw on the task list, Asma was somewhat puzzled. Kurenai also said, although I knew the outside world wouldn't be too peaceful, I didn't expect it to be the same in the country of fire. The country of fire is vast. Even with the suppression of the daimyo's army, it's impossible to eliminate all the bandits in the country with our woodleaf ninja. Yamanaka Inoichi was somewhat helpless. Compared to those small countries, our country of fire is actually very peaceful. Garashi sighed softly. Even chaos is regarded as peace. Such a world must be sick. Asma joked. Is this the occupational disease of medical ninja? You want to cure everything you see. Garashi shook his head gently. People are sick, there are medical ninjas to treat them. The world is sick, who should we find to treat it? Asma was full of confidence. Of course it's up to us. But before he could finish, Yamanaka Inoichi reminded, here we are. The 4 of them had passed through the forest and there was a mountain village in front of them. Seeing this, the 3 of them also quieted down and listened carefully to their sensei's arrangement. According to the description of the task, there are a total of 47 bandits in this mountain village, and we can't rule out the possibility of missing or hiding. Yamanaka Inoichi glanced at the 3 of them and smiled slightly. How to distribute and attack, it's up to you 3 to discuss. With that, he consciously walked to the side and quietly watched their performance. He also wanted to know what kind of conclusion his 3 genius disciples would come to. However, Asma's first sentence almost made him break his waist. I think it can be like this. Garashi is in the middle, I will go left, Kurenai will go right, no one is allowed to grab the opponent. Kurenai looked at him contemptuously. You know that Garashi and I ended the battle quickly with genjutsu, so you said that, right? Asma said righteously. It's because I'm slow that you should let me find more feeling. Red blinked her eyes blankly. Was it an illusion? Why do I feel that Asma's tone is somewhat proud? Seeing that they were still seriously discussing, Yamanaka Inoichi coughed twice. Cough, have you forgotten the key points of infiltration and assassination in the ninja manual? Asma said righteously, as long as everyone is dead, isn't it a perfect infiltration? That sounds reasonable. Of course not. Yamanaka Inoichi was a little crazy. He could guarantee that if he wasn't worried that this was Naruto-sama's teaching, he would definitely let Asma understand what the depth of love is. Cough Garashi, what do you think? After calming down, Yamanaka Inoichi looked at him expectantly. I don't really care, but... Garashi smiled and said, since it was Asma's suggestion, let's just listen to him. Asma patted Garashi's shoulder. Good brother. Garashi smiled helplessly. He didn't know that the stories he told in class in order to get closer to him in the 1st grade would really lead a certain 2nd-generation kid astray. He had to take the blame for this. At the same time in the village. Brother Sigma, there's news from Woodleaf. The bearded bandit said. The one you bribed from Woodleaf to help us pay attention to the mission bounty? The one-eyed man sitting on the main seat asked. Yes, it's him. The bearded man nodded again and again. He said that someone has entrusted the mission to eliminate us. Hearing this, the surrounding bandits were a little panicked. That's Woodleaf, ranked first among the 5 great ninja villages. Damn, which bastard entrusted it? What should we do? Should we hurry up and break up? Quiet. The one-eyed man shouted discontentedly and then asked, "How much is the bounty?" "It's 60,000. Only 60,000. Sigma sneered. "According to the information we heard, 60,000 is only below average among their sea-level missions. This kind of mission is generally only accepted by genin." Hearing this, the bandits who were frightened by Woodleaf's fame also relaxed. "So it's just a genin? That kind of ninja who only knows 3 body techniques is not much stronger than us." "That's right, it's not like we didn't kill those ninjas in the country of Kawa." The bearded man quickly praised. "Brother Sigma is worthy of being the man who will become the bandit king, a mere ninja." However, Sigma stared at him. "I just told you not to panic, but we still have to run." The bandits were a little confused. "Brother Sigma, Konoha is different from a small ninja village like Tangin. There are 2 kinds of genin teams. One is pure genin, and the other is led by Chunin Jounin. If it's the latter, we have no ability to resist at all." Sigma looked at them coldly. "So, after this last mission, we will go to the Wind Country." The bandits were a little hesitant. "Boss, the Wind Country is also one of the 5 major countries." "Idiot. Only the 5 major countries have money like the country of Kawa. We can't rob 10 times as much as the country of fire." Sigma said calmly. "As for why the Wind Country is the largest, and the strength of the ninja village is the lowest among the 5 major countries, as long as we don't go too far, those ninjas won't have time to care about us. As expected of Brother Sigma. After this last mission we will—" Suddenly there was an explosion outside the hall. Sigma's face was gloomy. "They won't come so soon, right? Let's go out and see." The bandits walked out of the hall uneasily, and then they saw 3 children standing outside. Only 3 people? Thinking of Brother Sigma's explanation, the bandits were relieved. As long as there's no legendary Chunin. Sigma took 2 steps forward and pulled out his sword. "You are Woodleaf's ninjas?" Asma held his chin. "You don't seem surprised?" Sigma looked at him. "Don't underestimate the bandits. If you leave now, I can pretend that nothing happened." Garashi tilted his head. "Are these your last words?" Sigma's face was cold. "I've killed 56 arrogant guys like you." Before he finished speaking, a huge fireball flew towards them. The bandits wanted to escape, but they found that they couldn't control their bodies, and they could only watch themselves being engulfed by the flames. Seeing this, Sigma felt his hands and feet were cold and he screamed, "Impossible, how can they be genin?" On a tree in the distance, Yamanaka and Noichi looked strange. "Is this considered infiltration? It should be, right?" You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.